One of the most exciting and stupidly action-heavy anime of the 2024 spring season, Windbreaker takes us back to the classic high school versus high school brawls featuring intriguing delinquents. In this video, we'll cover the beginning of the story up to their first battle with a shady rival high school. Let's get started. The story began with the entrance to a town being shown, with a sign greeting those who enter. It's a sign put up by the strong ones. This the town Mikochi, Tanbu shopping district. As a man walks through the town, he is driven by a desire for the strong and dismisses the weak. Nearby, a disturbance unfolds. A woman is being harassed by men. A man invites her to join him, but she refuses, surprising him. She replied that she wanted to smash the eggs on their faces, but it would be a waste. So, she declined. Her response amuses the men, who express a preference for strong women, warning her not to resist too much or she might regret it. When one of the men grabs her arm, she protests that it's painful. The protagonist made his entrance at that moment, seizing one of the men by the shoulder and positioning himself to throw a punch. He was disgusted by those who believed themselves to be strong when they were actually weak. He brought the men to the ground, questioning where their bravery had gone. Grasping one by the clothes, he warned him to remember his face. In his mind, the hero wished to be feared by the weak and sought out by the strong. He introduced himself as Sakura Haruka from Foreign High. He was about to leave when the woman called out to him. He hadn't noticed her, so she approached to express her gratitude for his assistance. This took Sakura by surprise, and he glanced around, asking if she was speaking to him, but no one else was there. Sakura couldn't believe it, remarking that he hadn't intended to save her. He simply couldn't stand the arrogance of those men. The woman was taken aback by his response and asked if perhaps he was hungry. She served him omi rice and remarked that he didn't seem to be from around there. They were inside a cafe, where the woman spoke to him. Sakura acknowledged that he indeed looked like a weirdo, but noted that wasn't what she meant. She mentioned that many fights and rivalries between teams and gangs occur in that town, making it not very safe and consequently frequented by few people. However, she added that she, too, was an outsider. Introducing herself as Tachibana Kodoha, she expressed pleasure in meeting him. Sakura was surprised by her warm attitude, especially as she didn't seem startled by the fact that he had just punched 5 men right in front of her. She asked whether he wasn't going to eat or if he found it unappetizing. He then proceeded to try the omi rice with a spoon and enjoyed it, and when asked if they did takeout, she replied they did not. Kodoha noticed his unusual style, particularly the split coloring of his hair. She inquired if he was wearing contact lenses or had dyed his hair. This question seemed to offend him, and he asked if there was a problem. Kodoha moved closer to examine his eyes, admiring the marble-like color, which surprised Sakura. He asked if she was trying to pick a fight, but she assured him that wasn't her intention. Sakura claimed that she was the odd one out, not even shocked by the events that had unfolded, nor was he the subject of laughter. She remarked that she regularly encountered far more bizarre things. This made Kodoha think, pondering if her assumptions were correct. Sakura explained that in fights, appearances don't matter, which is why he chose to attend Foreign High. They might not have the highest test scores, but they boast the strongest fighters, a school brimming with dropouts. There were daily clashes, juniors versus seniors, with confrontations even during holidays. He was confident that he would rise to the top there. Kodoha responded that he certainly had the attitude for that environment, at least. Sakura agreed, saying he is someone who only shines in battle and aimed to claim the top position, becoming the strongest among the worst. He felt the place was a perfect fit for him. Kodoha remarked that his expectations seemed high. Perhaps that's why he was already wearing their uniform, even though classes didn't start until the next day, possibly out of excitement. He countered, saying he had just moved there and had no other clothes to wear. Kodoha laughed, suggesting he seemed eager about his school life. He challenged her statement. Then, an elderly person stood up and thanked Kodoha for the meal. Kodoha expressed her gratitude in return and advised him to be careful. Suddenly, Sakura approached, mentioning that the elderly person had left behind his paper bag. This surprised them both. The elder admitted to being forgetful, often leaving things behind. After that, Sakura returned to his seat and resumed his meal. Kodoha handed over some candies to Sakura, explaining that they were from the elderly person as a token of thanks. He said that he had been a great help. Sakura blushed at this. While she teased him, Sakura silenced her. He found the people there incredibly strange, wondering why they treated him kindly despite his appearance. Moreover, he questioned why they were thankful to him, especially knowing that his uniform was from a school known for delinquents. Normally, the people around him were cautious and suspicious. Once when he found a wallet, he was even accused of being a thief. They shouldn't trust others so readily, he told them. Kodoha then asked if he wanted to be trusted or not. She just laughed and claimed that foreign high school was a good choice. But she stated that he wouldn't be able to reach the top of foreign. That much she could say. These words pricked at the Sakura's pride. He couldn't even get close to the top, let alone reach it, she thought. At this rate, no one would care about him. This prompted Sakura to stand up and declare that she didn't know his strength. Kodoha conceded that he seemed strong, but noted that wasn't enough to reach the top at foreign, especially since he was on his own. Her words irritated him, and he reacted with annoyance. He wasn't weak, he asserted, to need others for victory. She clarified that she wasn't referring to physical strength. He would only understand her point if he got to know the people from foreign. He dismissed her remarks as lacking sense. Outside, a commotion was evident, with some men causing trouble. Residents were calling out because of the disturbance. The troublemakers revealed they didn't expect Sakura, the foreign brat, to show up alone. It turned out these were the same individuals he had punched earlier, now returning with backup. Sakura was attempting to leave when a man halted him, challenging whether he had forgotten them so soon. They pointed out that he had asked them to remember his name and face, remarking on the impossibility of forgetting someone with such a unique appearance. They mocked his look, questioning if he was in a costume, doubting the authenticity of his hair and eyes. Others expressed disbelief, likening him to a cat, to which he responded with laughter. Indeed, this was the reaction he had come to expect, typically shunned, distanced, and denied by many. He was at peace with this reality, having accepted it. Nonetheless, he held on to the belief in his own significance. By defeating the one confronting him, he would prove himself superior and valuable. He had deduced that if he could make it to the top, his worth would be affirmed. Yet, he couldn't believe what had been said to him earlier, that he couldn't reach the top because he was alone. The man whom Sakura had beaten up claimed that Sakura had picked the wrong fight, stating that he was lucky to have a team that would back him up. He declared it was now a war between them and foreign. Without warning, Sakura punched him in the face, thinking to himself that he was always left to fend for himself. His assailants were taken aback. Sakura knew his appearance was odd, but wondered what that had to do with anything. That was just who he was, and there was nothing he could do to change it. He quickly moved to attack the others who were fighting back. Sakura dodged a punch from one of his adversaries. He pondered that there could only be one at the top. As long as he was the strongest, then he would reach that summit. He questioned what that had to do with being alone. Kodoha heard the disturbance outside and went to check. Sakura was startled when one of the assailants stopped him by taking Kodoha as a hostage. He knew that the people from foreign would not intervene if there was a hostage situation. Nonetheless, Sakura suddenly kicked the assailant, causing him to release Kodoha, who then thanked Sakura. He warned her not to get the wrong idea, clarifying that he just didn't like that guy, which was why he acted. He questioned if they had any honor, bringing knives to a fight. Shortly after, another attacker tried to blindside him, but he spotted and kicked the attacker in time. He had expected such behavior from trash like them. They were cornered by their adversaries, which caused Sakura concern. He realized he wouldn't be able to fight effectively if he had to keep Kodoha safe. He wondered why he was even considering her welfare. No matter what he did for others, it seemed to always end poorly for him. As he faced one opponent, another on the ground grabbed a knife and stabbed at his leg. Just then, someone with a baseball bat approached, ready to strike him. This forced him backward against the wall, with Kodoha behind him. It was precisely this reason he resented getting involved with others. Konoha grew anxious as they had no escape route. Unsure of what to do next, the hero resigned himself to the incoming blow from the baseball bat and closed his eyes. Suddenly, someone arrived, expressing delight at the presence of a first-year student. This surprised Sakura. He noticed a man in a foreign uniform blocking the baseball bat strike. This man recognized Konoha and told her not to talk about what had happened to that guy. He then elbowed the opponent and began speaking to them. The adversaries were visibly nervous upon seeing him. He questioned if they understood what they were doing in that place. Sakura was astonished. The man split the baseball bat in half and warned them about the consequences of their actions. He was furious and ready for confrontation, as were his companions, who also appeared to be from foreign high. They noted that they were expecting much more, and that 2 of them would have been sufficient. Sakura wondered why the foreign students would save him. The adversaries recognized Hiragi from foreign. One of them said they shouldn't fear because there were only 4 of them, and so they attacked. Hiragi ordered Matsumoto, Kaji, and Yanagita not to let them get close, threatening to send them flying otherwise. Another attacked Sakura, but he couldn't move due to a stab wound in his leg. Hiragi came to the rescue and told Sakura to step aside if he was hurt. Sakura replied that the man was his. Hiragi angrily told him to just sit down. If he moved with an injury, it would be harder to protect him. This was unexpected for Sakura. He was surprised by what he heard. Cheers came from the surrounding crowd, and people from their own terrace expressed that they had been anticipating the arrival of the foreign students. This made Sakura question what was going on. Konoha explained that she had mentioned earlier the area wasn't safe due to the sudden fights between gangs and teams. However, the situation changed 2 years ago, and the students from foreign were responsible for that change. It was they who had installed the sign at the entrance of their town. Hiragi, fuming with anger, declared that if they couldn't use a bat correctly, they should at least learn to read. The sign was a warning to those who intended to harm others. Originally, it was just for foreign high, but the locals had come to recognize them as well. The people of foreign were the protectors of the town, guarding against those who sought to cause destruction or harm, without exception. The wrongdoers would be punished by Boforin. They were the town's wind protective chime, their shield, the windbreaker. Before long, they had defeated the troublemakers, much to the delight of the onlookers. This was something Sakura hadn't anticipated. The people of foreign, once despised, had seen a reversal of fortune over the past 2 years. Though they still got into fights frequently, they were now beloved and deemed necessary by the community. This irritated Sakura. It seemed as though they were considered heroes of the area. He contrasted the smiles they were receiving with the disdainful looks he used to get. Even though they were known as troublemakers, the people were not afraid of them. In fact, they were accepted by everyone. People approached Sakura, commending his skill and thanking him for their protection. An elderly woman came up to check his injury, but he couldn't quite grasp what was happening and stopped her. This reaction left the bystanders, especially the old woman, taken aback by his outburst and refusal. So, Konoha approached and took hold of his leg, reminding him of his earlier statement about being alone yet recognizing that he didn't choose this. Nevertheless, she insisted that the people there needed him. This irritated him, and he retorted that he didn't need anyone else and didn't want to cause trouble. Konoha then questioned why he had taken old man Yama's bag earlier or why he had saved her. She proceeded to clean his wound and apply a bandage. She reassured him that it was okay if he couldn't accept them yet, but since he was looking at her, she hoped he would also look at them. She was confident that he could become someone others need. Sakura was in disbelief over the remarks made and the way everyone viewed him. Suddenly, he dashed off, to the astonishment of Hiragi and the others, and took a spectacularly high jump. He found it incredible that the troublemakers were seen as heroes and noted that he too could achieve victory on his own. He pondered the meaning behind Boforin's role as the town's protector. Maybe there he could transform into someone truly formidable. And with that thought, he delivered a kick to the individual who had initially provoked him earlier. The kick had such immense power that it sent the man hurtling through the air, leaving everyone in awe. Konoha merely smiled at this turn of events. This was the story of a person who started from rock bottom, skilled only in fighting, and how he would become a hero. The next day, Sakura arrived at the cafe where Kotoha worked, and she asked if anything was hurting him because of the odd expression on his face. It turned out he was carrying an elderly lady on his back, much to his annoyance. This lady was the old woman named Satu who greeted Kotoha. Sakura asked her to get down, but she complained of difficulty due to her age. He jokingly threatened to drop her instead. Suddenly, the old lady just jumped down and called him a rude boy. He was utterly surprised, having assumed she needed help because her hips were sore. When she realized this, she pretended to be in pain despite walking just fine. "Don't say that," Sakura remarked, after she hopped down like a superhero. Even though he spoke in such a way, he was still from foreign. The elderly woman thanked him for his assistance, causing Sakura to blush and then quickly make his exit. Kotoha stopped him, offering an egg sandwich. He mentioned that there was an entrance ceremony at school today, but Kotoha glanced at the clock and noted it was still too early since the ceremony wasn't until noon. As Sakura thoroughly enjoyed the sandwich, Kotoha teased him, suggesting he seemed excited. He denied it, saying he was just wandering around, but she countered, asserting there was nothing wrong with feeling excited, especially since Foreign High was filled with many interesting people. This irritated him, who told her not to make things up. Just then, someone arrived shouting Kotoha's name. His excitement led him to trip upon entering the cafe. Sata recognized and greeted him. He proudly showcased his foreign uniform. He was introduced as Nire Akihiko, another first-year student at Foreign High. Sakura noticed there was still a price tag on his outfit. Startled, he tried to reach for the tag on his back, but struggled and fell again. Laughing, he confessed he had also forgotten to remove the tag from their pants. Sakura was surprised to learn they were in the same year at Foreign as well. Nirai's expression suddenly changed upon realizing he's an outsider. Sakura asked if there was a problem with that. Nirai then approached, intrigued by Sakura's appearance, noting the half-and-half color of his hair and eyes, and wondered aloud if stress was the cause. Sakura didn't expect that, while Kotoha simply laughed. She introduced the two to each other, mentioning that Sakura had just arrived yesterday. Nirai pulled out a notebook and mentioned he hadn't heard anything about Sakura yet. He questioned why someone as unknown as him would come to such a place. Nirai shared some trivia, mentioning that Foreign was not just an ordinary school. He explained that the people from Boforen were the ones who protect the townspeople, dubbing them allies of justice for rescuing the weak and standing against the strong. He added that everyone at Foreign looks up to the seniors who protect the town and thinks they're incredibly cool, counting himself among their fans. Yet, it puzzled him that an unknown person with no apparent connections would suddenly turn up at Foreign. Sakura simply continued his meal, stating that his aim was to become the top at Foreign. Nirai was surprised by this ambition. Sakura remarked that the idea of allies of justice sounded cool, and, considering that there were many strong people there, he figured that if he could become number one, it would be fulfilling. Their conversation fell into silence following his statement. Nirai responded that it's easy to say but difficult to achieve his goal. If he was serious about it, Nirai joked, he might go bald from the stress. Kotoha couldn't help but laugh. Sakura threw down a challenge, but Nirai noticed it was getting late and he needed to leave. Kotoha was surprised he wasn't staying for breakfast, to which he replied he had just stopped by to show her his uniform. He had thought about patrolling the area while waiting for the entrance ceremony. As he was leaving, Nirai grinned and proudly declared that from now on, he too was an ally of justice. Not watching where he was going, he bumped into the wall, which only made him laugh before he exited. Kotoha remarked that Nirai really was an interesting guy. Sakura agreed, noting he hadn't met anyone as klutzy. Moreover, he was surprised to find out that Nirai was from Foreign too. He mused that he needed to become even cooler to truly be called an ally of justice. Kotoha responded, not expecting Sakura to complain about Nirai's appearance, and offered him coffee. Sakura said that it wasn't about looks. In his view, those who act tough based on their looks but then run away when a fight breaks out are lame. Kotoha questioned whether he was pushing that image too much. Sakura replied that he had seen it several times before. As Kotoha prepared coffee, She asked if he knew the real color of coffee beans. This made him think. She said they were red, glossy, and bright like cherries. She admitted that initially, she too thought the coffee beans sold in stores were harvested looking that way. She also didn't realize that it's part of the seeds and are actually white before roasting. If you look from just one angle, you wouldn't know the full truth behind it. She believed everyone is free to assume what they want, but he was perhaps too quick to judge. One should converse, observe carefully, and try to understand. Otherwise, he might never truly know what kind of person they really are. Sakura recalled what he had been told previously about his perception of others. He abruptly asked if Nire was strong. "Is that all you notice?" Kotoha questioned. Observing the busy town, Sakura took a stroll, pondering Kotoha's advice on not being quick to judge others. He was caught off guard when a baker offered him some bread. He wondered why he was being offered this, and the baker explained that the people from Foreign often helped them, so it was important to give back occasionally. One recognized him as the guy who fought the day before, expressing joy that he was there to help. Surprised by this, Sakura quickly walked out, claiming he wasn't hungry. The bakery staff insisted and packed it for him to eat later. Sakura blushed, unaccustomed to such attention. The fruit vendors noticed him too and gave him an apple, just like the croquette vendor did, saying what he did yesterday was cool. The alcohol vendor recognized him too and challenged him to a drinking contest, citing his strength. As Sakura walked along, he accumulated many gifts from various vendors and owners. He thought to himself, wondering what kind of situation this was and why people were so friendly to someone like him. It made him reflect again on Kotoha's words about not making decisions on his own. Sakura pondered if perhaps he was the one who assumed that others wouldn't notice or thank him. Suddenly, he dropped everything he was carrying when a woman quickly approached and asked if he was from Foreign, seeking his help. In an alley, Nire was seen knocked down, unsure of how to react to someone who had challenged him. The man was annoyed because Nire had intervened while he was speaking with a woman. "Why do you have to butt in?" he asked. Nire responded that it was clear the woman was not interested. The man questioned how Nire could know that. He scoffed at the presumption of Bofrin members acting as protectors when, in reality, they were the ones in need of protection. As the man was about to walk away, Nire grabbed him by his clothes. Irritated, the man told Nire he was worthless and should go home and cry to his mother. Unfazed, Nire did not let go. The man couldn't contain his anger any longer. Nire then recited the words from the town sign, that all who harm, malign, or show malice, no matter who, would be punished by the people of Bofrin. This made them laugh. The man mocked the futility of Nirei's shouting that warning. Nevertheless, Nire still didn't release his hold. Overcome with irritation, the man began to punch Nire in the head, declaring he didn't care whether he was from Bofrin or not. He said that if anyone was to be punished at that moment, it would be him. Nire was prepared to endure the assault, but suddenly, Sakura arrived and kicked the assailant in the face. Nire, as well as the man's friends, were shocked. With just one kick, Sakura knocked the attacker to the ground. This prompted Nire to ask why he was being helped. The men challenged Sakura, asking if he was also from Foreign and had come to rescue his friend. Sakura replied that they shouldn't get the wrong idea. He simply couldn't stand by and watch so-called strong people, who were actually weak, being left unattended. He found them repulsive. As a result, he was attacked and questioned what his problem was. Nire yelled that he couldn't win on his own, but Sakura was all game face. Nire didn't expect to witness how he managed to take them all down. He remarked on Sakura's strength, noting that even alone he had managed to win. Sakura then glanced at Nire and left. Nire thanked him for the rescue. He might be disappointed to learn that someone like him was part of Bofrin. Sakura replied that Nire shouldn't think too much of it. He hadn't saved him for any particular reason. Besides, deceptive appearances were everywhere. He admitted he didn't know why Nire wanted to attend Foreign, but suggested that he should be aware of his limitations. Nire explained that when he was younger, he was bullied every day. He felt helpless and just accepted what was said to him. But one day, he was saved by a student from Foreign, which suddenly made those he feared seem cool. Because of that event, He aspired to be like them, to study at foreign and also be cool. However, he broke down in tears and admitted that he still felt as lame as he did back then. Sakura reflected on this because, in his view, the truly lame people are those who pretend to be brave but then run away from a fight. He remembered Nirai's earlier confrontation with the men and reconsidered. Sakura simply told him not to cry about it, as it made him look weaker. But he assured him that, in his opinion, he wasn't pathetic at all. Nirai was surprised by his statement and was then approached by the woman. She asked if he was okay, to which he responded yes, he was perfectly fine. The woman confessed that she was worried when the man grabbed her arm earlier, but she was rescued by him. Therefore, she bowed and thanked him for his help. He couldn't hold back her tears. When she also noticed Sakura, she expressed her gratitude to him as well. Nirai called Sakura over, seeming annoyed. Suddenly, Nirai pulled out a notebook and pen from his pocket and started asking questions about Sakura's height, weight, blood type, birthday, hobbies, and talents. There were so many questions that Sakura didn't see coming. Nirai even tried to estimate and measure his height. This made Sakura uncomfortable, and he asked him to stop. Nirai apologized, explaining that he couldn't help but collect data on people he thought were cool. Sakura blushed again at this and said he'd leave it up to him. As they were about to part ways, Nirai mentioned he would just observe Sakura up close instead. He also offered to guide him. Sakura took offense, questioning if Nirai thought he didn't know his way around. But Nirai clarified that although he might not be of help in a fight, he was perfectly capable of guiding him around the entire town and introducing him to people, all the way to the top. This was unexpected for Sakura. Suddenly, Nirai pulled him and pointed out where their school was, which irritated Sakura with the sudden tug. The foreign high was then shown. It's a new school year and a new beginning. Nirai's tour wasn't over yet, so he tugged at Sakura to follow him. Sakura was reluctant to go because he was busy eating, claiming he's always hungry after fighting. He enjoyed the bread, and Nirai commented that even though it was cold, the bread from that place was still tasty. They started walking, with Nirai urging Sakura to hurry up. Sakura responded that if Nirai was in such a rush, he should go ahead on his own. Finally, the two arrived at their school, and Nirai couldn't contain his immense excitement. He showed Sakura the stronghold of Bofurin, and he was evidently excited about this new place. Sakura reminisced about meeting other foreign students when he rescued Kotoha and how impressively cool they were. Their strength had made an impact, and he was eager to meet more people like them there. Nirai waved at Sakura and announced that he had found their class distribution. Sakura hadn't expected that their bulletin board looked like it came from a historical play. They searched for their names, and Nirai was thrilled to see that they were in the same class. He checked who else was in their class and was surprised to see Fujibayashi, Kirita, and Matsuura also listed. Sakura was curious if they were his friends, but Nirai denied it, simply stating those were impressive individuals. Sakura then walked away, advising Nirai not to get too excited about the class distribution since everyone was essentially the same. Nirai remarked that it was very important who they ended up with in class. He glanced back at the list and couldn't believe what he saw. This made Sakura ask what the problem was. Nirai was shocked by what he saw and mentioned that it would be a problem if they ended up in the same class as a yet unspecified guy. This made Sakura wonder why Nirai suddenly lost his excitement. Nirai then asked him for a favor, to promise to try and get along with their classmates. Sakura was irritated and asked if he was joking, but Nirai insisted he was serious. He explained that the group from their town, Bofurin, protects the area. Therefore, it wasn't surprising if people treated him differently as an outsider. It was important, he stressed, for him to show that he wasn't an enemy of Bofurin and that he too wanted the best for their place. Nirai abruptly stopped speaking when he saw Sakura warming up before entering the classroom. Sakura explained that he didn't know what kind of people were inside, so he should be prepared. Nirai became annoyed and asked if Sakura had listened to him. From their perspective, he was an outsider. If misunderstandings arose, he could end up making enemies of the entire class or even the whole school. Nirai questioned whether Sakura understood that this could happen. Therefore, he urged Sakura not to provoke unnecessary fights with them. Sakura replied that he didn't care if they became his enemies. Had he forgotten that his reason for being there was to become the top? To achieve that, he would of course have to compete against them. Suddenly, Sakura opened the door, with Nire behind him. The people in the classroom were just staring at them. Nire did not expect their intense scrutiny, and it seemed not to be a good sign. Sakura commented that it was not half bad. Others in the room were just observing them. Others are working out or using their cell phones. Suddenly, a man wearing an eye patch approached Sakura and Nire. Nire was shocked, while Sakura got ready to fight. Nire stopped him and explained Sakura was just excited. Moreover, when Nire noticed the black eye patch and the long tassel earring, he was certain of the man's identity. The man simply smiled at them and introduced himself as Leonard DiCaprio, which surprised both of them. Sakura asked if he was a foreigner, but the man replied that he was also Japanese. Nire noted that he was also a joker, contrary to his initial impression of him being calm and collected. He recognized him as Suwa Hayato. Hayato explained that there was an evil spirit sealed in his right eye, but Nire knew it was actually an old injury. Irritated, Sakura called him a lying bastard. Suwa responded, indicating that enough had been said about him, and expressed a desire to get to know Sakura. Nire felt nervous, suspecting that outsiders like him might be treated as foreigners there, and worried about how they would integrate into the class. However, they were surprised when Suwa laughed and mentioned that he had heard about Sakura's central role in the brawl on Main Street the previous day. This was not the response they had anticipated from him. Others became curious about what they were discussing. Suwa was confident they had heard about the confrontation at the spot yesterday. He mentioned that Hiragi had been there, but it was Sakura who first defended the town. He confirmed if his understanding was correct. Suddenly, their classmates approached them, prompting questions. One person mentioned that since Hiragi was handling the rescue, they knew the situation was under control and didn't need to ask further questions. Another shared that his grandmother was there and said that unknown students were present. They knew it was an outsider who had caused the incident, and it was okay since classes hadn't started yet. Sakura was surprised by their reaction. In Nirai's mind, the situation had settled, and it was impossible to think of Sakura as an enemy anymore. Surely, the person in question must think the same. Suddenly, someone asked why he had come all the way to study at Foreign. He answered that it was to be the top of the school. This honest answer surprised everyone, and confusion was evident on their faces. Nire quickly reacted to clarify that this didn't mean he was challenging everyone to a fight. Even Suwa just smiled. But Sakura clarified that that was indeed what he meant to say. Nire tried to silence him when suddenly a chair was thrown at him, which he luckily dodged. Everyone was puzzled about where it came from. It turned out to be one of their classmates who had done it, and Nire was visibly nervous upon seeing him. The man seemed very angry, while Sakura just looked curious and smiled. Nire knelt down and said that Sakura couldn't fight him. He claimed this person was the most dangerous in their year, perhaps even in the entire school. This was Tsujishita Kyotaro. Sakura just smiled and said it was fine with him, since he really wanted to fight the strong. Kyotaro quickly approached him, ready to attack. He wanted to crush Sakura in the fight. The intensity of the fight was so great that it even threw others off. Nire was covering his face, but luckily Suwa pulled him to safety. Tsujishita split a table in half in his anger, seemingly embodying the true spirit of Foreign High. Sakura was delighted, commenting on how fired up he was getting. Suwa remarked that they shouldn't discuss becoming the top in front of Tsujishita. Tsujishita threw a powerful punch, but Sakura dodged it. Suwa added that Tsujishita often visited Foreign, even while he was still in middle school. His passion and talent were the reasons he was allowed to become a Bofriend before even attending high school there. Moreover, he was extremely loyal to the current top, albeit a bit overzealous and extreme in his admiration. He was fanatic about reaching the summit. Mentioning any takeover of that position could change his demeanor instantly. Someone suggested to Suwa that he should stop them, but he responded, "Why not do it himself?" It was impossible for them to stop such monsters. They might even die if they tried to intervene. The fight was extremely intense. When it looked like Sakura was about to be hit, they worried about whether to call an ambulance. However, Sakura deftly dodged like something out of the Matrix, mentioning only the air was hit. This gave him the opportunity to deliver a powerful kick to Tsujishita. The class couldn't believe what they were seeing. Tsujishita was still standing even as Sakura managed to spin back around after the attack. He taunted Tsujishita by calling him a fanatic, implying that it meant having no mind of his own and being incapable of making decisions. Sakura declared that it was impossible for him to lose to someone like that. The rest of the class stepped back, merely watching as Tsujishita and Sakura faced each other. Nire tried to stop Sakura, but they were both determined to continue the fight. However, they paused when suddenly a voice came through the speaker. The speaker seemed confused, unsure if everyone could hear him or if what he was doing was correct. Sakura wondered what was happening. They were all startled when a very loud congratulation for everyone who had been admitted to the school boomed through the speakers. The speaker was advised to lower his voice as he was clearly audible to all. It was so loud, they might even get noise complaints from neighbors. Sakura became irritated, saying it ruined the mood. He turned to Tsujishita, challenging him to continue the fight. However, he noticed that Tsujishita was only focused on listening, and he wasn't the only one. The entire class was frozen and attentive. This made him question the atmosphere and who was speaking. They heard the man's voice again. He introduced himself as a representative of Bofurin, identified as Umemiya Hajime. Sakura was surprised and realized that this person was the top of Furin and the strongest in the school. Everyone was puzzled when Umemiya apologized, admitting he had forgotten what to say next, something Sakura hadn't expected. However, Umemiya quickly recovered and advised everyone to enjoy their youth and to make lots of memories now that they were in high school. He suggested going on a trip to the beach or the mountains and invited them to go on a summer trip to eat shaved ice. Nire laughed at the statement, prompting Tsujishita to suddenly grab his head and ask if anything was actually funny. Nire clarified that he was just very thankful for what was said and felt impressed. Umemiya was surprised when he realized he had suggested that they all should leave. It was just his habit of saying everyone. It seemed impossible that they could all go on a summer trip together. Moreover, he doubted everyone would get along. But he was skeptical that they would start fighting right away, on day one. He wasn't insisting that they get along but hoped they would do their best. Tsujishita then wiped his face, prompting Suwa to comment that even if he wiped the blood off his face, they had all seen their fight. Another thing the Bofurin leader wanted to say was that they should protect the city. They had earned the name Wind Protective Chime, so they should live up to it and protect everything valuable to them, whether it's people or objects. That was the only unique rule in Bofurin. Everyone shouted Asu in unison, which surprised Sakura. That was it. The speaker hadn't been turned off yet, but you could hear him say that now his speech was over. He invited someone to eat. He was told that everyone could still hear him. Sakura wondered why, even though the leader wasn't physically present, there was such great admiration and respect for him from everyone. Could it just be done because you were strong? He pondered what kind of person Umemiya might be. Suddenly, Suwa stepped between Sakura and Tsujishita and suggested that the two make peace. He proposed they shake hands as a sign of reconciliation. They couldn't believe his suggestion. Sakura stated they weren't finished yet and questioned why he should shake hands with someone like that. Suwa knew it was Tsujishita who started it, but if aiming to be the top was his goal, maybe it didn't matter to him. Suwa then turned to Tsujishita and remarked, "What would Umemiya think if he heard that he tried to kill his classmate?" Everyone awaited the resolution between the two. Following Suwa's comment, Tsujishita reluctantly raised his hand, offering to shake hands to end it all. Sakura couldn't believe he was serious. Nire whispered to Sakura to take his hand. Sakura was confused, wondering if he should just shake hands and not continue the fight or raise his fist instead. It seemed to be the first time he would touch someone outside of fighting, and the feeling was somewhat odd. The reluctance was evident on both their faces as they were compelled to shake hands. Everyone in the class who witnessed this was amused and puzzled. The handshake between them grew tighter, while Suwa just smiled from the side, pleased by the scene. When they finally let go, both were still visibly irritated with each other. Suddenly, Sakura was pulled by his classmates and fell to the floor. Furious, he He demanded to know what they were doing. They praised him, commenting on how strong his kick was and how elastic his body seemed. They hadn't expected him to challenge and attack Tsujishita. Sakura smiled as his classmates continued their chatter. He thought, ever since he arrived, it had always been like this. His classmates wondered why Sakura suddenly became quiet, making them anxious about whether he was choked up. Sakura then stood up and retorted, as if he would die there. Now, he thought to himself how unexpectedly comfortable he felt, something he had not anticipated. Suddenly, a man entered the class and captured their attention. He told them to go outside and not to fuss. Sakura was puzzled, considering he had just arrived. Moreover, he wondered who this person was. Suddenly, they were shown to be busy painting outside. Nire complained that the paint wasn't even in that area, and Suwa brought some paint. Sakura couldn't believe the situation. 30 minutes earlier, the entire class, including Sakura, had come out. He mentioned he had just arrived in the classroom, but was shushed by someone. It turned out to be Inomoto Takashi, a second-year student, who instructed them to head to the court immediately. He said they didn't know what would happen if they were late. He insisted they stop chatting and leave right away. When they reached the court, other students were already there. One, visibly annoyed, pointed out that it took them exactly 7 minutes and 48.26 seconds to get there. This was Hiragi Toma, a third-year student. He remarked that even kindergartners could have made it out faster than them. All they had to do was come down from the 4th floor. Sakura recognized the person, much to Nirai's surprise. Sakura recounted an incident where he had saved someone at a cafe and saw them there. Nirai asked if it was Kotoha he was referring to. Surprisingly, Hiragi suddenly sprinted to cover Sakura's mouth, visibly furious. This shocked everyone as they didn't understand what was happening. Hiragi demanded to know why Sakura mentioned that Kotoha was involved in yesterday's disturbance, emphasizing that he had explicitly ordered not to mention her presence. Sakura was annoyed by Hiragi's saliva and blamed him for not understanding. The others grew curious about their conversation, worrying that if people found out Kotoha was there, it would create chaos. Hiragi looked at Sakura and stated that Kotoha wasn't there yesterday. He warned Sakura never to mention what happened there, or else he took something from his pocket saying that he would end up coughing up blood. Sakura was surprised, and Hiragi took his medicine. He remarked that he didn't understand why Sakura, being an outsider, had come there, to a place with such a weird leader. Sakura was puzzled by this. Nirai asked what they were talking about, and what kind of person he was. Sakura explained that Hiragi just got annoyed, complained suddenly, and then took some Gasikin tin. Nirai took notes on this information, writing in his notebook that Hiragi took stomach medicine. Sakura wondered why he was writing this down. Nirai responded that Hiragi is one of the 4 heavenly generals of Bofurin. It seemed Sakura was not familiar with this. Nirai explained that the top of Bofurin is Yumimiya, but he has 4 heavenly generals. Each one of them is in charge of a class for 3 years. They are like commanding officers. Sakura asked if this means they are the first squad, since they are in Class 1. However, Nirai said it's not like that. The order of the 4 heavenly generals is reflected in the classes starting from Class 1, which is called the Vaisravana unit, followed by the Dhritarashtra unit, Virudaka unit, and Virupaksh unit. They belong to the Vaisravana unit. Hiragi suddenly ordered them to form groups of 4 to 5 people. Each group should include a 2nd or 3rd year as a member. They were to follow any orders and warnings from these members as needed. Sakura was puzzled about why they needed to form groups, and Hiragi explained that they would be patrolling the area. The protagonist was annoyed to find himself grouped with Tsujishita. Hiragi shared that he had been instructed by Yumimiya to keep an eye on both of them. He asked if they had fought yet. Sakura pointed at Tsujishita and reported that he had tried to punch him. Hiragi separated them and instructed them not to get close to each other. Suwa laughed, remarking that Hiragi seemed like a kindergarten teacher. Sakura asked why they were just walking around if they were supposed to be patrolling. Shouldn't they be the town's protectors, actively seeking out and confronting troublemakers? Hiragi called him a moron, clarifying that what he described wasn't protection but hunting. Even though they were just walking, there was a purpose to it. Hiragi explained that the mere presence of their uniformed group would likely deter troublemakers from acting up. They were there to protect, not to initiate fights. Sakura fell silent for a moment, then remarked that it sounded boring. Hiragi insisted that it was even more boring to enjoy being alone in a fight. Hiragi's attention was captured by an old woman climbing the stairs. He quickly ran to warn her about the danger. He also called over his peers. Returning to the previous scene, they began painting. The elderly woman thanked them for their help, commenting that even if they removed it, there was still a lot of graffiti on their walls. Sakura was furious that they were just made to paint. Nire responded that this was also a task for the people of Bofurin. Hiragi asked if they were finished. The shop owner expressed his gratitude by offering them food. They left and continued their patrol. Sakura thought about what he had said earlier about not having fun without fighting. Hiragi said he understood Sakura. He admitted that he had felt the same way in the past, but that talking to others and being needed were also enjoyable experiences. This made Sakura think as he ate. They continued their patrol until they reached a tunnel. Sakura noticed that the area beyond it was filled with bars. He was puzzled when he saw a sign that he thought looked like a dog and remarked that it was disgusting. Nire, frightened, cautioned him not to say such things there because he didn't know who might be around. This left Sakura wondering who Nire was referring to. Nire explained that the place they were at was the border of another group's territory, where they couldn't cause trouble beyond that point. It was like another country with a very different perspective, where their rules did not apply. The group ruling that area was known as the Absolute Creed of Strength, or Shishitoren. This thought made Sakura smile. It seemed like the perfect place for him. Suddenly, they heard something from the tunnel. A boy was running towards them. Hiragi was surprised to see a boy in a third-year middle school uniform. He yelled and asked the boy to run towards them. Fear was evident on Nirai's face. Suddenly, someone kicked the running man, surprising everyone. Another member was annoyed for being blocked by his companion. Nire couldn't believe what he saw as his teammates jumped onto the turf of the rival group. It turned out to be Sakura and Sugishita, who intercepted the man who was thrown off balance. If he was part of their group, it meant that they were the ones who started this, he said. Hiragi and Nire were shocked by the actions of the two. They kicked a member of the Shishitoren who was chasing the middle school student. Sakura declared that he would handle it and asked Sugishita to leave it to him, but he did not respond. The Shishitoren member's companion couldn't believe what had happened. He asked what happened to their friend, then kicked him in the face. They mocked the one lying on the ground, calling him lame because he was downed by a single kick. Sakura wondered why they were treating him like this. Weren't they his companions? The sound of footsteps from someone wearing traditional Geta sandals was heard, surprising Sakura. The man asked what was happening there. The faces of the two Shishitoren members showed nervousness. They bowed as the man approached. Sakura got curious. The man mentioned that he had noticed them running there. Hiragi was annoyed, wondering why of all people they had to encounter him. It was Togameju, the vice leader of the Shishitoren group. Togame scrutinized them and asked why the foreign people were in their territory. He noticed Sarawatari lying on the ground and inquired about what had happened. Sakura pondered what was up with that guy. Hiragi had no choice but to intervene, explaining that the Shishitoren members were chasing a member from foreign. Togame was surprised to find out it was Hiragi and greeted him. Sakura was taken aback by his relaxed attitude. He pointed at Sarawatari and asked them if it was their doing. Laughing as he spoke, the reaction from the people of Foreign was mixed. Sakura thought he looked like trouble, which excited him. Sarawatari struggled to stand and asked what they were doing there. Didn't they have rules about their respective territories? They were now on Shishitoren turf, he shouted, warning them not to wander around their turf carelessly. Surprisingly, Togame suddenly attacked him powerfully, an act that the foreign people did not expect. He grabbed his hair, readying to throw a punch. He declared himself defeated, implying he was weak. He couldn't finish his statement because Hiragi suddenly stopped him. Togame was puzzled when he asked if that man was part of Shishitoren. Still holding the beaten Sarawatari, he questioned who he was referring to. It couldn't be the person he was holding because there, defeat means you're weak, and the weak are not needed by Shishitoren. He then took off his Shishitoren jacket. On the other side, Suwa and Nire were just watching and reflecting. Suwa had heard about them, but based on what he saw, he didn't think they were great comrades. Suddenly, Sakura interjected, calling them lame. He then questioned their absolute symbol of the creed of strength, which Togame didn't expect. Sakura asked if beating the weak could really be considered strength. He thought he had encountered an interesting person, but it turned out to be disappointing. Hiragi was stressed by the events while Tsujishita remained silent all this time. Togame was surprised by Sakura's comment. The Shishitoren members debated whether they should kill Sakura because of his comments. However, Togame advised against bothering with it. Furthermore, he observed Sakura closely and remarked that Sakura had a peculiar look, likening him to Othello. This comment irritated Sakura, prompting him to silence Togame. He claimed Sakura spoke too fast to be understood, to which he retorted that he was simply too slow. Togame laughed and mentioned that he hadn't heard Sakura's comments, which he found annoying. Togame suddenly declared that he had made his decision and that in the right place, he would beat up Sakura. He said he will remember his face, mockingly adding, "See you later, Othello." This irked Sakura. Nire approached and asked Sakura and Tsujishita what they were thinking. He accused them of causing trouble on the rival group's turf, which could lead to war. Suwa tried to calm the situation, suggesting that he has lost his chance to appear on stage. Meanwhile, Hiragi was preparing several medications due to the extreme stress from the events. Suwa remarked that just looking at Hiragi made him feel not so bad anymore. Nire warned that the medication should only be taken as prescribed. The looks exchanged between Sakura and Tsujishita were grim. Nire also scolded Sakura, suggesting that if he hadn't provoked Togame, the situation might not have escalated. Hiragi then spoke up, clarifying that Togame was not that simple. Even within the Shishitoren, he was known for his strong conviction about turf matters. It was unlikely he would let things go so easily. Nire felt bad about the unfolding events. Hiragi admitted it was his mistake. He should have been the first to act. They didn't expect to hear this from him. For now, he suggested they return to the school and called the beaten man, who introduced himself as Sasaki. They needed to report the incident to Umemiya. As they ascended the stairs at Furin, Hiragi visibly seemed uncomfortable. Sakura wondered if he really disliked reporting to their leader that much. The voice he heard over the intercom sounded relaxed, making him curious about what kind of person Umemiya was. Upon opening the door, they were greeted by what appeared to be a rooftop rest house, complete with a couch and planting materials. The entire area was shown, and they were amazed by it. Hiragi went straight to Umemiya. Sakura followed him with his eyes, eager to meet the top of the school. Suddenly, Umemiya showed Hiragi something. Holding 2 pots, he happily announced that the eggplants and bell peppers he had planted were growing well. He smiled and said they should have a barbecue next summer. Finally, the 3rd year and leader of Bofrin, Umemiya Hajime, was revealed. Everyone's faces showed surprise, wondering if he really was the strongest in that place. Suwa commented that he looked like a grade school kid. Hiragi reported to Umemiya that something unpleasant had happened. Even though he was turned away, Umemiya said that he already knew. They couldn't believe how quickly he had found out and wondered who had told him first. Suddenly, Umemiya revealed that the issue was the uneven number of fields and seeds he had. They were surprised because his concerns were different. He added that he had another field open and asked Hiragi if he wanted something to eat specifically. Hiragi started to mention something about shishito, but before he could finish, Umemiya assumed he was referring to shishito peppers. Umemiya then asked if those peppers were okay for his stomach. The first-year students couldn't believe the unusual interaction between the two. Now, Suwa understood why Hiragi always had stomach pain. Sakura was shocked and questioned if that man really was Umemiya. Tsujishita got irritated and lunged at him. He declared that the person was indeed Umemiya. Sakura complained about his loudness. Because of this, Umemiya suddenly noticed them and asked why they were there. He then proudly showed off his plants, claiming each one was special and cute in its own right, and asked for their opinions. To Hiragi, they all just looked like grass. Sakura was annoyed that he wasn't listening and that Umemiya continued to speak without pause. Sujishida's protectiveness towards Umemiya was evident, while he busily pointed out the differences in his plants. Sakura remembered it was similar to when he heard him over a radio call. It seemed like Umemiya enjoyed joking, and yet his voice alone had everyone's attention. Sakura wondered what it was about this man that drew people to him. Sasaki, clearly stressed, suddenly spoke up asking if he would explain what happened. He explained he had seen someone shoplifting, and when he chased the man, he ended up on the Shishitoren turf, where they then chased him back. He suddenly mentioned that Sakura and Sujishida had saved him. He always admired Bofurin, and thus he tried to act tough, but in the end, he inadvertently triggered the trouble with Shishitoren. He couldn't help but cry and apologize to them, bowing deeply. Umemiya then called him by his name, which surprised him. Umemiya simply thanked him. Both Sasaki and Sakura were shocked. Although he triggered the incident, it happened because he tried to protect someone in the town. Umemiya reassured him that there was no reason to apologize and told him to leave everything to them. Umemiya then asked how the two had saved him. Sasaki explained that they had kicked him. Umemiya laughed, saying they would surely be annoyed by that. He knew they didn't just listen to talks, but that it was a way to stir things up. Hiragi admitted his fault. Umemiya commented on how easily Hiragi gets depressed about everything, asking wasn't he tasked to watch over them. It seemed Hiragi's stomach was hurting again. Suddenly, Nire interjected, blaming Sakura for worsening everything. Sakura retorted that there was no need for such comments. Umemiya then asked if Sakura had challenged him to a fight. Clarifying, Sakura expressed his annoyance about their belief that strength is everything, calling them lame for beating up the weak. That was all. Suwa laughed at this admission. Umemiya stood up, surprising Sakura, but suddenly reached out to pat Sakura on the head, saying, "Well said." Sakura hadn't expected this. Umemiya added that he too had been thinking the Shishitoren had become boring and lame lately. He called Sakura by his name and mentioned that he had heard about what happened yesterday and today, appreciating Sakura for saving Sasaki. He thanked him for protecting his family and expressed his happiness at having such a reliable little brother, with a smile. This was incredibly unexpected for Sakura. Hiragi and others felt relieved by this, but Sujishida was visibly upset. In Sakura's mind, he pondered the warm feeling he was experiencing, annoyingly feeling as if his energy was depleted. Now, he understood why they followed Umemiya. Being with him brought a sense of peace. Suddenly, Sakura pulled his hand away, asking when he had become Umemiya's little brother. Umemiya responded that everyone in that town was like his family. This annoyed Sakura. Their conversation was interrupted when someone called Hiragi. He asked Kaji on the other line what was happening. Kaji only mentioned Shishitoren. Hiragi was puzzled and asked what had happened, causing Umemiya to become concerned as well. Just as they heard someone speaking through a megaphone, the person asked if they were there, holding a foreign student by the head. Sakura and others peeked from the rooftop. The man below introduced himself as the leader of Shishitoren, Tomiyama Choji, and suddenly challenged Umemiya to a contest and fight. Nire was shocked to realize that he was the leader of the rival group and wondered why he was there. In Sakura's mind, if Togame was the vice leader, this person must be even stronger. Sakura felt a thrill of excitement. Suddenly, he felt as if there was a fire at his back, coming from Umemiya. Umemiya put on his coat. Wondering what was happening, Sakura quickly followed him. Suwa, Sujishida, and Sasaki also joined in pursuit. Umemiya instructed them to stay put and remain alert. Sakura responded that if there was going to be a fight, he would join in. However, Umemiya's tone changed abruptly as he stated he wouldn't repeat what he had said before. This different demeanor struck Sakura, causing everyone to pause. It seemed as if he was suddenly rooted to the spot. Sakura wondered if this was really the same person he had met earlier on the rooftop. Umemiya approached Choji and asked what was going on. The most formidable individual from Shishitoren made his entrance at Furin High School. Umemiya inquired if Tomiyama was aware that his captive was from Furin. Tomiyama confirmed this with a grin and questioned whether Umemiya was upset by it. Umemiya's displeasure was evident, while Sakura and others merely observed from a distance. Sakura marveled at Tomiyama's audacity for smiling in Umemiya's presence. He pondered the nature of the beast Tomiyama could be. Subsequently, Tomiyama released the Furin student he's holding and issued a challenge to Umemiya for a one-on-one duel. He proclaimed himself the instigator of the current situation, implying that his motivation should surpass his own. Umemiya maintained a stoic silence amid Tomiyama's jeers and provocations to engage in combat. Internally, Sakura noted the excessively high energy of the man. Umemiya finally offered a response, concurring that his faction had indeed been the aggressor, but contended that his actions for coming there had only brought about disorder. Umemiya told him that he should be satisfied by what he did, as it rendered them even. At this, Tomiyama paused and offered a succinct, "I see." Nire was worried if the leader will truly be satisfied with that. Umemiya then proposed that, given these circumstances, it was time for Tomiyama to retreat to his territory. In response, Tomiyama allowed himself a slight grin before launching into a formidable kick, startling the onlookers. Umemiya easily blocked the kick, chiding Tomiyama for his habitual impatience. With a smirk, he pointed out that he had been the one to initiate this time, and thus he dared Umemiya to strike back. His enthusiasm and readiness to engage were palpable. Yet Umemiya remained composed, questioning Tomiyama's deep-seated desire for combat. His inquiry caught Umemiya off guard, who then confessed that instead of conflict, he wants Umemiya. This revelation left those present in a state of disbelief. Tomiyama said that his reign as the leader of Shishitoren had been so boring. Yet, Umemiya, despite being the leader of Bofurin, radiated happiness, a stark contrast that Tomiyama deemed unfair. Driven by this sentiment, he resolved to take over Bofurin and make Umemiya his own. Nire was shocked by his declaration. Umemiya, while surprised, showed understanding towards Tomiyama and suggested that his situation must have been hard. At that moment, additional Shishitoren members made an entrance, warning Umemiya not to be condescending towards their leader. The arrival of his allies was unexpected for Tomiyama. Togame criticized the solo raid strategy as impractical, explaining how he suddenly made haste the second he heard of the situation. He lamented Tomiyama's habitual neglect of his advice. Observing Sakura, Togame referred to him as Othello, eliciting a retort from him, who in turn labeled him shaggy hair. Umemiya expressed his irritation and insisted that he should remain silent. Sakura angrily responded that he had no intention of disrupting his duel, but he's not gonna watch in silence while Umemiya gets surrounded. A smile was his only response. Tomiyama, on his part, declared it was time for their confrontation, hence the need for the crowd to step back. Togame pointed out the impracticality of a face-to-face fight in that particular space, glancing around at the Furin High School students who were watching from their classrooms. Fearful, Nire voiced his concern about the grave nature of the event. Umemiya then prohibited anyone from coming closer. He addressed Tomiyama, accepting the duel under the condition that he should have his people retreat. Tomiyama, content with the arrangement, affirmed that this was the outcome he had anticipated. Suddenly, Arima spoke up, suggesting that Umemiya might be too kind, or perhaps he was just scared. Sugishita's ears rang with indignation at this provocation, and he said that he will crush Arima. Arima responded, urging him not to take offense because he was correct. Kanuma then mentioned that he was the guy from before, admiring his ability to recognize them despite their bland appearances. Suwa then spoke, observing that Kanuma had a feminine air despite his appearance, and labeled him adorable, much to Kanuma's annoyance. Togame intervened to calm the situation, suggesting to Choji that if he sought a one-on-one bout, it would be more appropriate to schedule it for a different day since evening was approaching and their visit was unscheduled. He looked toward Sakura and commented that the darkness would conceal his beaten-up face, jestingly adding, "Isn't that so, Othello?" In response, Sakura rebutted sharply, and asked him how will he be able to look at his own face. Responding to the jest with a grin, Choji, taken aback, inquired if there was a pre-existing familiarity among them all. Consequently, he put forth a suggestion for a competition among themselves. Much to Umemiya's astonishment, the proposal was not for an outright war, but for a series of individual one-on-one duels, akin to a festival atmosphere. Togame, with a smile, drew a comparison to group battles in Kendo, and Choji agreed with him. He articulated his excitement, designating Choji and Umemiya as the first pair of combatants, followed by himself against Othello, who clarified his name as Sakura. Arima then stepped forward, offering to take on Tsujishita, while Suwa was paired with Kenuma, mockingly referred to as the cute guy's choice. Omiya asked him if shouldn't he be enough for a one-on-one fight, to which Choji responded that it would be more interesting with everyone. The sentiment was echoed by their companions, who also looked forward to participating. Choji and Togame reveled in the plan, yet Hiragi, the commander of the Vice-Ravana unit, showed displeasure. Suddenly, Sako expressed his wish to confront Hiragi, catching him off guard. Following this, he extended his apologies to Umemiya and requested permission to partake, which was then accepted. This agreement set the stage for a clash between Bofurin and Shishitoren, heralding the beginning of an all-out brawl between schools. They made arrangements to converge with the members of Shishitoren at the tunnel. Prior to their encounter, they decided to hang out at the cafe where Tachibana worked. Nire expressed significant concern over the upcoming direct confrontation. Sakura asked him to shut up, but Nire pointed fingers at him for the situation. Tachibana presented them with Omuris, pointing out to Nire that succumbing to panic wouldn't be beneficial. He encouraged him to eat up and relax. Nire countered, feeling misunderstood, highlighting the potential end of Bofurin as a consequence of the next day's events. Tachibana reiterated that panicking wouldn't serve any purpose, promising that the situation would resolve positively, and emphasized their strength, confident in Nirei's comprehension of the situation. Realizing the time had advanced, they noted only 18 hours remained until the showdown. When Choji was departing, he informed them of their plan to gather in the tunnel by midday, telling them not to be late. Nire proposed a strategy session. Sakura wondered how can strategies help in a one-on-one duel. Additionally, having finished his meal, he asked if he can go home. Nire observed Sakura's rapid consumption, remarking on the untouched vegetables on his plate. Moreover, Umemiya and the rest were yet to arrive. Their delay was notable, as they had kept everyone waiting without their presence. Suwa acknowledged the complexity of explaining everything to the other Bofurin members. Sakura interjected, curious about Umemiya's decision to dine at the cafe. This led Tachibana to jest about Sakura's recent consumption of Omuris. Suwa pointed out the cafe's status as a renowned gathering spot for Bofurin, but his explanation was cut off by the prompt entrance of their leader, Umemiya, who enthusiastically greeted Kotoha. Displaying charm at the counter, Umemiya lauded Kotoha's hairstyle, a compliment that seemed to leave Kotoha unfazed. Umemiya shifted the conversation to the topic of vegetables he had previously mentioned, sharing a photo of the growing produce he promised to deliver to her by summer. Sakura looked on in disbelief at the exchange. Suwa observed their leader's evident fondness for Kotoha, questioning if there was a romantic link, which both parties refuted. Umemiya described Kotoha as akin to a younger sister, a characterization Kotoha quickly corrected as inaccurate, further making Sakura confused. Kotoha offered a clarification, stating they were raised together within the same facility. The labeling, she explained, was a decision made by Umemiya alone. This revelation surprised Sakura, who had anticipated a more intricate backstory. Catching his eye, Sakura queried if he had correctly interpreted the little sister designation. Should it not be older sister? It was then disclosed by Kotoha that she was merely 16 years old, a fact that left the protagonist bewildered given her mature appearance. Out of nowhere, a chair flew towards them, launched by Tsujishita. Sakura screamed in irritation by what he did. Umemiya concurred with the observation that Kotoha seemed older and sought their views, which they find somewhat disturbing. He then cautioned Sugishita against such reckless actions. Hiragi admitted that Umemiya harbors a vulnerability concerning Kotoha, indicating that any hint of danger to her would provoke a predictable response. This admission left both Sakura and Nire astounded. Meanwhile, Umemiya savored the omuris, declaring it the finest in Japan. Kotoha interjected, advising him to focus on eating. Umemiya queried Hiragi about his lack of appetite, to which Hiragi divulged a sudden reminiscence of the old Shishitoren. Prompted by Umemiya's remarks regarding the diminished allure of their rivals, Sakura inquired if they had once been different. Hiragi explained that strength is everything. As a cohesive unit, Shishitoren consistently sought formidable opponents. While they frequently instigated conflicts, pursuing a middle schooler was not their typical modus operandi. He reminisced about their confrontation, which evolved into full-scale conflict, yet admitted to finding a peculiar satisfaction in these engagements. Nonetheless, the emergence of Tomiyama as their leader coincided with the spread of bad rumors, marking not the first occurrence of such an issue. Hiragi recalled multiple stories where it is said that Tomiyama had provoked discord. The expectation was for Tomiyama and Togame to epitomize peak strength, focusing solely on the welfare of their group. His monologue concluded as he finished his meal. Umemiya then hypothesized that Tomiyama could be the underlying issue, arousing Sakura's interest. Admitting a lack of specifics, he suggested a detailed discussion the following day. His surprise was evident when he heard there would be a conversation. Weren't they scheduled to engage in a battle tomorrow? The leader corrected this misunderstanding by explaining that a fight itself is a form of dialogue, a concept that startled him. Occasionally, employing fists as a means of communication is the most effective strategy to truly grasp what the adversary stands for. These were concepts uniquely understood among them. He then ordered more omu rice. Sakura thought about what Umemiya mentioned, that a fight can serve as dialogue, and that fists act as the words. Once they had finished their meal, they dispersed, with instructions to arrive on time the following day. Umemiya, full of anticipation, said his goodbyes to Kotoha, assuring her of his return. Sasaki garnered the group's attention to acknowledge that he had yet to offer his thanks. With a bow, he expressed his deep appreciation for their intervention in his time of need and voiced his hopes for their triumph in the forthcoming challenge. Sakura found himself taken aback by this sentiment, whereas the rest exuded confidence about the impending encounter's results. Suwa assured they would exert their utmost effort. Faced with uncertainty about his response, Sakura confessed he hadn't engaged in the battle solely for Sasaki. Kotoha chided him, suggesting the appropriate response was, "Leave it to me." Because of this, he relayed these exact words to Sasaki, much to Kotoha's delight. She playfully remarked on Sakura's flushed demeanor. This encounter marked perhaps the first instance he would enter a fray on behalf of another. Uncertain yet filled with a sense of invincibility, but he felt unbeatable. Returning to the current moment, the anticipated confrontation between Bofurin and Shishitoren was at hand. Choji greeted them with palpable enthusiasm. Umemiya, in turn, extended an apology for their intrusion. Choji warmly greeted Umemiya, expressing his anticipation for their arrival. This marked the beginning of the one-on-one battles between Shishitoren and Bofurin. Choji, excitedly pointing out the path to their confrontation site, was advised that there was no need to hurry. Sakura was surprised to notice the area of Shishitoren was filled with bars. Nire added that it seemed to be the largest street in that locality. They speculated it might be noisy at night. Suddenly, Sakura wondered why he had come along. Considering he wasn't part of the fight, he reasoned that he was related to the situation in some way. Moreover, as a member of Bofurin, even if he couldn't protect them, he needed at least to be able to defend himself. Therefore, he expressed a desire to learn from them. Their attention was drawn by his words, and Sakura simply let him be. However, Suwa teased him about blushing, which led to Sakura shushing him, a sentiment echoed by Hiragi. Hiragi questioned whether they felt nervous. to which Umemiya offered reassurance, mentioning they seemed reliable. At the alleyway, Choji gestured to indicate the direction, visibly overflowing with excitement. Again, they were welcomed by Toga-mei. Nire felt a surge of nervousness upon seeing the destination they were led to. This was the headquarters of Shishitoren, housed within an abandoned cinema known as Onii-Chan. Now, they merely refer to it as Ori. Upon reaching the entrance, Choji opened the door, revealing the Shishitoren members inside, buzzing with excitement for the arrival of the combatants. Their curiosity about the newcomers was visible, with some recognizing Umemiya and Hiragi. Questions arose about the identities of their companions. Suwa sported a smile while Sakura and the others simply observed their surroundings. Nire couldn't shake off his fear, comparing the place to a den of beasts and wondering if he would make it out alive. Nevertheless, he reassured himself that his participation was aimed at becoming stronger. Sakura advised him to focus on what was ahead. The leader of Shishitoren took to the stage, running up to announce that it was time to kick off the thrilling one-on-one battle contest. Umemiya laughed, amused by the festival-like treatment of the battle. He checked on his companions to ensure they were all right. He mentioned that the event had turned into quite the spectacle, but since it was primarily between him and Choji, the outcome, win or lose, was inconsequential. The aim was to enjoy the contest. Nire was surprised by his statement. The protagonist responded that he did not wish to be defeated, a sentiment Suwa agreed with. Hiragi seemed proud of them, with Umemiya commenting on how reliable they all were. On the stage, Choji called out to Umemiya, suggesting they begin their battle. However, Toga-mei interjected, stating that the leaders could not start the fight. As a result, Arima volunteered to go first against Sugishita, the one with long hair, noting he had been staring at him for a while. This arrangement seemed fine with their leader, prompting Sugishita to step forward. Sakura suddenly addressed him, warning that if he were to lose to his opponent, he would no longer pay him any attention. He asked if Sugishita was listening, emphasizing the importance of not losing. Sugishita didn't respond and simply continued making his way to the stage. The Shishitoren members vigorously cheered for Arima, urging him to annihilate his opponent. While seated, Nire consulted his notes, searching for Arima Yukinari's name. He discovered that Arima was a power type who had previously fractured ribs with a single punch. Suwa commented that Sugishita possessed similar capabilities, suggesting there was no cause for concern. However, their leader disagreed, pointing out the matchup's lack of fairness. This prompted them to ponder his remark. Arima, with a stern look, criticized his opponent's gaze. Sugishita remained silent, but then Arima suddenly shifted his attention to the side, asking Umemiya what was happening. This distraction caused his adversary to glance aside, at which point Arima landed a heavy punch on him. The reactions among the Bofuran members were mixed. Arima cautioned his opponent not to be distracted during a fight, mockingly calling him a moron. However, Sugishita, gripping his arm, corrected that he should address him as Umemiya-san. Anger was evident in his eyes as he delivered a punch. This seemed to unsettle Arima, who apprehensively met his gaze. Without hesitation, Sugishita grabbed his face and hurled him to the ground with full force. Some spectators cheered, while the representatives from both groups were taken aback. Sakura remarked on Arima's weakness. Lying sprawled on the floor, Arima was reminded by Sugishita that he should refer to their leader as Umemiya-san. Sugishita emerged victorious in the initial bout, to the astonishment of the Shishitoren spectators. Their surprise turned to curiosity about the victor's identity and his academic year from the opposing faction. Nire was taken aback by how swiftly a single attack had felled the opponent. Kanuma was similarly stunned by the outcome for his teammate, and Toga-mei was rendered speechless. Meanwhile, their leader, Choji, clapped in response. That caught Sakura and the others' attention. Toga-mei maintained his silence next to him. Choji inquired about the name of his opponent, indicating a keen interest in challenging him too. Yet, Toga-mei intervened to prevent him from proceeding. Nire was bothered that Choji wasn't even worried about his teammate and is even praising the enemy. He mused that this was not the first occurrence of such behavior, noting that the members of Shishitoren truly seemed like crazy individuals. Umemiya extended his compliments to Sugishita, expressing his continual admiration for his formidable strength. Hiragi inquired about his well-being, to which Umemiya, still smiling, noted he's thick in the head. Hiragi stopped him, highlighting that he had received a blow to the face. Nire was profoundly impressed by their comrade's resilience, observing that he hadn't even flinched. In contrast, Sakura said he wasn't shocked. Having previously encountered him in combat, he knew what to expect, a revelation that amused the group. Suwa then posed a question, asking if he was acknowledging Sugishita's strength. He playfully refuted, attributing it instead to him being thick-head. Choji asked what would Kami do to defeat that guy. Silence followed from both Toga, Mei, and Umemiya. Prompted by the silence, Choji jumped up and announced it was time to proceed. He directed his gaze to those at the front and summoned 2 individuals to attend to the fallen Arima. The Bafuran members were taken aback by this move. At the same time, Kanuma was visibly shaking. Choji pressed the 2 to act quickly, but they found it challenging due to Arima's weight. Thus, they ended up tossing him down from the stage. They taunted him, remarking on his supposed toughness and subsequent defeat, even going as far as to kick him while he was down and laughing at him. In Nirai's thoughts, their behavior was cruel. As they returned to their seats, Sakura voiced out, admonishing them to quiet down due to their irritating behavior. Nirai was taken aback as he criticized them, pointing out how embarrassing it was for them to boast about the creed of strength when they were merely minor players. Sakura's words angered them. Suwa chimed in, stating that Sakura was merely squandering his time. He said that those children wouldn't understand unless they get beaten up. Unable to restrain himself, one individual seized him by the collar, challenging him to ensure Suwa understood. Choji stepped in, advising him to back off. They were chilled by the confrontation and returned to their seats, ready to move on to the next match. Sakura volunteered, though Suwa dismissed him as a dummy. By usual protocol, it was his turn to fight next. He glanced at Kanuma, whom he referred to as little boy, commenting on his apparent stress. He proposed some exercise as a remedy. The Shishitoren spectators gave robust cheers for Kanuma. Rising to his feet, Suwa called out to Sakura, criticizing his earlier aspiration to reach the top as naive. Sakura inquired if he was being challenged to a fight. Suwa responded that he had initially perceived him as thoughtless, but had come to recognize the weight of his words and actions. He now considered him pretty cool. Therefore, he vowed not to be defeated and committed to giving his best in the upcoming duel. Sakura urged him to just start the fight. Cheers for Kanuma filled the air. Puzzled, Sakura wondered aloud about the type of person he was. Nirai consulted his notes on Kanuma, but Sakura clarified he was referring to Suwa. He elaborated that Suwa had been renowned for his strength since middle school. While acknowledging Suwa's prowess, he queried what more there was to him. Nirai admitted his knowledge was limited to Suwa's fame, without specifics on his past victories. Sakura was surprised to find that everyone, including Hiragi and their leader Umemiya, was uninformed. His initial meeting with Suwa had revealed Suwa's kind demeanor. On stage, Kanuma, clearly anxious, blames them for his friend's misfortune. Suwa countered that the circumstances were now different. Kanuma mentioned that he had always been together with Arima. So of course, he'll be angry for what had happened to him. Suwa deduced that Kanuma only felt anger when personally affected, likening him to a child lacking restraint. Meanwhile, Sakura remembered Umemiya's description of Suwa as kind. Suwa then addressed Kanuma on the stage, suggesting the challenge might be too demanding for a little boy like him. Triggered by the exchange, Kanuma started to attack while Suwa remained unmoved. With a swift motion of his hand, Suwa evaded the attack, leaving the audience astonished. He commented that the tactic of appearing cute while angry was effective only in grade school. He then challenged Kanuma to climb the metaphorical staircase to adulthood. Suwa was not only kind, but also full of mystery. As the fight continued, both Nire and Kanuma were in disbelief. Kanuma was amazed at how quickly Suwa had maneuvered behind him. He decided then that he must strike with a speed that Suwa could not evade. However, when he punched, Suwa caught his hand and threw him down. Choji was thrilled by the action. It was evident that Kanuma was hurt by the fall. Suwa taunted him, commenting on how flashy his fall was. Irritated, Kanuma grabbed at Suwa's pants, but Suwa skillfully used his foot to fling his opponent again. While Kanuma was on the ground, Suwa asked him what he thought was most important for becoming a true adult. This question made Kanuma pause. He got back up and told Suwa not to speak to him. Nire was impressed because it seemed that Suwa's opponent was just falling over on his own. As a result of what was happening, the audience became furious. The Shishitoren spectators demanded that they take the fight seriously and not just play around. Kanuma became irritated and thought to himself what it would be like if they were the ones on stage facing him. It seemed that no matter what attack was launched, it appeared futile. In the foreground, Umemiya commented that Suwa had more than just a kind face. Sakura responded that there was no trace of kindness in his expression. He was sure that Suwa has a nasty personality. Instead of finishing him off or letting him live, Suwa thought of making their fight a show. He wanted to demonstrate the difference in their skills. If he were in Suwa's position, he might prefer death, although that wouldn't happen to him. Nire understood the point being made. Hiragi suggested that perhaps he had felt something after observing how things operated in Shishitoren, but he hadn't expected him to become emotional. This led their leader to wonder if that was all there was to it. He speculated that he might have been influenced by a certain someone, recalling what Suwa had said before stepping up. Up on stage, Suwa continued to belittle his opponent, who kept falling repeatedly. The Shishitoren crowd grew frustrated, urging him to stand up and take the fight seriously. In his eyes, he was only thinking about the Shishitoren leaders. Choji appeared merely bored, while Togame was unimpressed. He watched them intently, seeming to have a realization. Suwa asked if he had found the answer yet, and what he was thinking. Kanuma was in disbelief. He repeatedly shouted that it was impossible. He tried to punch Suwa but was kicked in the face instead. Kanuma's expression was indescribable. Suwa stated that he wanted to guess what was on his mind. He suggested that Kanuma might be seeing himself as the kind of person he used to mock. Suwa's only question was what Kanuma needed to do to become an adult. He added that this is the power of imagination. Kanuma was terrified while lying on the ground. Suwa looked at him differently now. Since he had managed to do this, Suwa claimed him as his own. He suggested moving on to the next one before he forgot. To solidify the power of imagination, he asked what was needed to make it a reality. Kanuma's demeanor had changed, and even as Suwa was just preparing to move, he was already terrified. Togame stood up and called a halt to the fight. He apologized and pleaded that his colleague be allowed to give up to avoid further embarrassment. He declared that it wouldn't happen again because, from that moment on, Kanuma was no longer part of Shishitoren. Kanuma was disheartened upon hearing this. Suwa walked away, stating that being an adult means having the capacity to empathize with others. To achieve this, one needs the power of imagination and experience. In his mind, he was satisfied because Kanuma had managed to take one step forward towards adulthood. Kanuma was left alone on the stage. It was not surprising that the Shishitoren spectators discussed him, as he seemed to have been merely toyed with by his opponent. Unfamiliar with who it was, they wondered if it was just a first-year student who had defeated Kanuma. They remarked that the Bofuran contestants were indeed no joke. When Suwa returned to his peers, their leader complimented his strength, which he humbly denied. Curious, Nirei asked if his technique was Kung Fu or Aikido, but Suwa responded that he didn't know either. He explained that his teacher was self-taught, so he wasn't sure. Nirei took notes on this. Hiragi noted that Suwa seemed emotional during the fight, to which Suwa replied that he normally wasn't like that. He had simply been influenced by Sakura. Sakura pointed out that one should not blame others for everything. However, he mentioned that one should take things seriously if they were to fight later. Nirei was concerned because it seemed that fighting was always on Sakura's mind. Sakura appeared to be an irritating opponent, so Suwa opted to pass on the challenge. This annoyed Sakura. As they chatted, Umemiya, the leader, noticed that there was already some influencing taking place. He mentioned that external stimuli were also important. He felt that they would make a good team. Meanwhile, Tsujishita remained silent. Kanuma dragged his friend's body away from the bottom of the stage. He told him how much his body hurt, which surprised Kanuma. They simply sat on the floor and talked. Since both had lost, they thought it was all over. They believed they had nowhere to go. Choji was pleased once again. He also expressed a desire to fight Suwa, who wore an eye patch. Togame then announced that it was time for the next match and asked who was next. Sakura stood up and declared that it was finally his turn. Seiko stood up, much to Sakura's surprise. He pointed at Hiragi, and they exchanged glances. Consequently, Hiragi stood and declared that he would go first. Sakura was frustrated because he had to wait again. He was eager to fight. He also felt that Togame didn't seem ready to fight anyway. Togame, being the vice head, should normally be his opponent. Sakura felt offended and asked if this meant he was not expected to win. The response was clear. Not at all. He would leave it to him. Sakura was taken aback by this, and he sat back down. Either way, he was confident he would win, even if others did not yet believe in him. He added that he should speed up his fight, so it would be his turn next. Nire was curious if Seiko and Hiragi knew each other, and Suwa indicated that they probably did. Their leader mentioned that Hiragi had never shared personal stories about himself. It wasn't strange for him to have acquaintances outside of Bofurin. Choji cheered for Seiko, while Togame expressed his surprise that he had requested a one-on-one fight. He questioned if something had happened between the two of them. However, Seiko remained silent and did not respond. Thus, Togame had no clues either. Nonetheless, Choji was excited to witness the face-off between Seiko and one of the four heavenly generals of Bofurin. On the stage, Hiragi commented that it had been a long time since they last met and that Seiko had grown up. He hadn't expected Seiko to end up in Shishitoren. He expressed feeling bad for him, but declared his intention to win the match. Again, Seiko offered no response. Choji, growing impatient, declared that enough talk had been exchanged and it was time to start the fight. Both competitors prepared, and surprisingly, Seiko launched an extremely fast attack. However, Hiragi managed to dodge it. Choji was delighted, while Nairai and others were astounded by the speed of the attack. The confrontation between the two was intense. Despite Seiko's speed, Hiragi remained unshaken. He mocked his claim that he would be the victor. Seiko couldn't believe that even now, he was still looked down upon. He found it nauseating. He declared that his former self was gone, and he would prove it through his actions. Seiko attacked, but Hiragi blocked it. The audience was extremely hyped due to the relentless battle. Seiko was on the offensive, continuously attacking. So, when he paused, Hiragi was caught off guard. This provided Seiko with an opportunity to land a hit. The Shishitoren crowd cheered wildly for this. Meanwhile, Nire was anxious as Hiragi was being cornered. Choji was also enthusiastically cheering for Seiko. Togame was impressed by his teammates' performance. Choji remarked that this was not surprising since Seiko is one of the big five of Shishitoren. He was confident that Seiko would not be defeated, even by Hiragi. Togame couldn't quite grasp what was going through his mind, but it seemed like Seiko was fighting with more fervor than anyone else. Even when he had first joined them, Seiko appeared desperate and seemed to have something to prove. Additionally, he was more talkative now. Normally, his responses were limited to yes or no. Perhaps this change was because Hiragi was familiar to him. Seiko observed that Hiragi was very serious and straightforward. Through their battle, he noticed that Hiragi had not shown any progress. Meanwhile, Hiragi remarked that Seiko was much more talkative now. He was always quiet when he was being trained by him back then. He didn't want to risk biting his tongue while fighting, which was something he never taught him. Seiko was focused when he suddenly unleashed a powerful attack that took Hiragi by surprise. He had become faster now, so Hiragi couldn't dodge his strike, and shockingly, he was hit. The spectators couldn't believe what they saw. As Hiragi lay on the ground, Seiko glared at him and said that instead of improving, he had become even weaker now. He ended up weak because of the people he associated with, eliciting mixed reactions from the Bofurin crowd. As he was speaking, Sakura interjected. Seiko thought he was being addressed, but it was actually Hiragi, whom he referred to as Shark Teeth Guy. Sakura was furious and even stood up and said that he was being looked down upon because of Hiragi. He questioned why he was becoming a wuss now. Nairai restrained him while Suwa just laughed. Suwa apologized, expressing his delight that Sakura was now considering them as his comrades. Sakura was surprised and quickly explained that his irritation stemmed from being looked down upon by the opponent. Sakura was then calmed down, and Yumimiya asked if his name was Seiko. He spoke to him to explain that Hiragi was one of the heavenly generals of Bofurin. He called him Vice Ravana and is also a leader of his own squad. Omamiya asked if he knew his other name. Seiko didn't know what he was talking about. Hiragi stood up and said it had been a long time since he was kicked that hard. His companions were shocked. Hiragi suddenly moved to punch, but Seiko dodged it. Hiragi couldn't believe he looked weak in front of so many people. Seiko indeed became strong and seemed like a different person now. Omamiya then revealed that another name for Vice Ravana is Bishamontan, the god of war who oversees battles. Due to the incident, a first year gave him an earful and he embarrassed himself. He said there was no remedy for it, but now, he claimed to be pumped up. He took his medicine and prepared to fight. The battle between the two continued, and now, it became even more action-packed. The audience was surprised and delighted. They rarely see such a kind of one-on-one fight. Even Suwa was impressed. Sakura couldn't help but wonder what Hiragi had, and he was amazed at his innate strength. Suwa mentioned that Hiragi became a heavenly general for a reason. It's because of his renowned strength. Sakura couldn't believe it and said that if he's that strong, he should have gone all out from the start. Nevertheless, even though he started strong, Suwa believed that his encouragement played a significant role. Sakura dismissed it, while Umemiya watched carefully. It's clear that even Seiko didn't back down. Choji was delighted at the display of strength. But even so, Togame noticed that the one on the aggressive side was Hiragi. Seiko seemed tired and struggling. He couldn't believe that Hiragi was now stronger than him. After all, he followed those who lived a relaxed and easy life. So he wondered why and how this happened. When they were young, Hiragi was seen knocking someone down because of their bullying. Approaching the victim, he urged him not to passively endure the situation and instead encouraged him to fight back. Offering assistance, he helped the victim stand up, who turned out to be Seiko. Seiko pleaded with him to teach him how to fight, surprising Hiragi, who agreed. Reflecting on their past, Seiko recalled Hiragi's remarkable strength. Despite Hiragi's unintentional influence, people naturally began to follow him. As they grew closer, Seiko admired Hiragi's strength, and simply by following him, Seiko felt a sense of pride. Skipping ahead to graduation, Seiko extended congratulations to Hiragi. With Hiragi heading to Furin, Seiko was confident he'd be the top there. He insisted that he should be the one to get that position. Hiragi glanced at him in response to his statement. Seiko expressed his willingness to go to great lengths to support Hiragi in reaching this goal. He hoped Hiragi would allow him to contribute to Furin upon his graduation. During that period, Furin wasn't yet unified. Seiko envisioned Hiragi rising to the top there, and he looked forward to witnessing it firsthand. However, Hiragi advised Seiko not to follow him, which came as a surprise. He couldn't believe Hiragi's words, deciding instead to follow Umemiya once enrolled in Furin. Therefore, he said he wouldn't be at the top there, and that he wouldn't meet her expectations even if he followed him. Hiragi departed, urging Seiko to seek a new goal, but he struggled to accept his decision. An incident was shown where Seiko defeated several men alone, drawing the attention of an observer who questioned if he was responsible. Impressed by his strength, they urged him to join their team. It was Togame from Shishitoren. Choji also expressed a desire to face him. When asked about his strength, Seiko confidently affirmed it, emphasizing their belief that strength dominates all. They only value the strong, and the stronger one is, the greater their potential. However, Seiko remained indifferent to this ideology. His sole desire was to confront formidable opponents, aiming to become even stronger and defeat Hiragi. He vowed to ensure that Hiragi regretted his decisions. Returning to the present, Seiko refuses to accept defeat. Unlike Hiragi, he vowed to exert every effort to become even stronger. Suddenly, he launches an attack from below, catching Hiragi off guard. But as Hiragi moves to strike, Seiko shifts to his back, ready to counter. Despite being kicked in the face by Hiragi, Seiko remains resolute, unwilling to yield to someone who merely follows others. Blocking his punch, Hiragi speaks to Seiko. Seiko apologizes for not meeting Hiragi's expectations. In response, Hiragi lands a punch to his stomach, causing Seiko to fall. He finds it hard to believe that Hiragi apologized to him. As they lay on the ground, he conceded his mistake, insisting there was no need for an apology. Reflecting on their conversation during graduation, he recognized that while Hiragi's words may have stemmed from concern, the implication that he shouldn't follow him was not what he wanted to hear. Acknowledging his own selfishness, he admitted that Hiragi had become his guiding light. Regardless of who he wished to follow, all he desired was to hear those words from Hiragi, "Follow me." And so, that's how the two of them ended their fight. Hiragi won. The audience couldn't believe that their comrade Seiko was defeated. Now they've met one of the four heavenly generals of Bofurin, Hiragi Toma. Suwa was impressed by the intense battle they witnessed, while Umemiya just smiled. On the opposite side, despite Seiko's loss, Choji maintained his smile. He admired Hiragi's strength and wanted to fight him too. Togame stood up and looked at their group, suggesting someone should have Seiko removed. No one seemed eager to do it. Hiragi volunteered and said he would handle it. He lowered Seiko and Togame thanked him, emphasizing there was no need to be gentle with him. Togame approached Seiko and grabbed his clothes, but Hiragi stopped him, catching him off guard. Hiragi said he should deal with him later, after his own fight. It's uncertain what might unfold. Hiragi stood up and said, "Who knows?" But he said he was just talking to himself now. Even if he did that, their team wouldn't be stronger. Togame commented on his monologue. When he returned to the Bofurin team, he was praised by his teammates. Nire was on the verge of asking, but it seemed unlikely for him to divulge any information about Seiko. As Hiragi took his seat, Umemiya commended him, expressing genuine admiration for his roundhouse kick and hoping not to be on the receiving end of it. Hiragi, on the other hand, was curious why he didn't ask. About what? Umemiya asked. Hiragi responded, who he fought against and what became of them. Umemiya was taken aback and asked if he wanted to share. He wasn't sure, so he said he didn't need to. If he wished to reveal it, he could do so freely. Those were the details he wanted to hear from him. Hiragi merely glanced at him, wearing a smile. Togame was in a daze, so Choji approached him to tell him that he's up next. He apologized for his momentary lapse. Togame rose to his feet, eager to kick off the match. Finally, he said he would be facing Sakura, whom he referred to as Othello. The crowd was hyped, cheering loudly. They were waiting to witness Togame's fight. Some even requested he end it with just one punch, urging him to finish it quickly. Suwa was amazed by the ambience of the upcoming match, while Nire felt nervous. As he stepped onto the stage, Nire cautioned him to be careful. Suwa told him not to die there and Hiragi said it was all up to him now. Meanwhile, Tsujishita remained silent. As he climbed onto the stage, Umemiya said, "Go out there and have a good talk." He recalled their previous discussion, where Umemiya mentioned that fighting is a discussion. Even now, he ponders if that concept holds true. It feels different this time. It's unlike the usual thrill because his opponent is strong. Though he couldn't quite grasp it, he remembered the recent encouragement, where he said it's now entirely up to him. He simply smiled and declared his readiness to confront it. Togame, on the other hand, advised against rushing things. Removing his glasses, he explained that it's not wrong to hasten things, but sometimes you'll feel like something is missing. Particularly, in this case, he wanted to take time to enjoy it. Sakura's companions watched intently, and it was evident from Sakura's expression that he was ready. Both parties prepared themselves and exchanged glances, waiting to see who would strike first. When Sakura threw a punch, Toga-me swiftly dodged and countered with a swift attack. Sakura didn't anticipate this, and even Suo was surprised by its speed. Toga-me smiled as he quickly brought Sakura down with a leg sweep. Sakura was momentarily stunned, and Toga-me ready to punch. However, Sakura quickly evaded, countered with a kick, and rose to his feet, managing to dodge his intended attack. Hiragi watched their battle intently. He was convinced of Sakura's strength, especially after witnessing his previous fight. However, the reason why Toga-me kept Shishitoren's standards of absolute strength was because he was incredibly strong himself. Sakura admitted that despite his intention to pace the fight, Toga-me's speed was unexpectedly quick. This surprised Toga-me, prompting him to inquire if that was already moving fast. He added that he hoped Sakura could keep up with his calm speed. Sakura just smiled and said he's in it for the long run. Toga-me prepared to deliver a powerful punch, but Sakura skillfully avoided it by jumping aside. In its subsequent attack, Sakura dodged once more. Sakura likened his opponent to a wild boar, while he was referred to as a monkey in return. Nire couldn't believe that Sakura's only response was evasion. Umemiya noted that when it comes to Shishitoren, Toga-me and Choji stand on a different level, a higher caliber compared to the previous three. This revelation surprised Suo and Tsujishita. Perhaps the one standing there knew more. And Toga-me ready to punch. But he countered with a kick. Nire was pleased by the successful evasion. Toga-me then smiled that Sakura can match his speed. Observing Sakura's agility, he seized his foot and hurled him. As Toga-me was about to step on Sakura using his geta, Toga-me remembered his disdainful taunt. He said he was really pissed off by that. Sakura managed to dodge. He wasn't pleased with his manner of speaking either. Sakura prepared to take him down. However, Toga-me saw what he intended to do and evaded. He grabbed him by the head and slammed him onto the ground. Sakura was visibly hurt by that. The Shishitoren members celebrated. They called him crazy, as always, and extremely strong. Even Choji cheered loudly for Toga-me. Meanwhile, Nire and Umemiya looked anxious. He pulled Sakura and told him that for now, he's the lame one. Only the strong ones can act cool and say whatever they want. He said the reason he could do this might just be because he's part of a strong group. If he were to shatter Furin's image, he'd stand alone and have nothing to say. He questioned Sakura if he was mistaken. He resisted and prepared to throw a punch, but Toga-me interrupted, indicating he hadn't finished speaking. Suddenly, Sakura grabbed his elbow and struck him. This allowed him to break free and seize an opportunity to retaliate. Sakura responded affirmatively, agreeing with Toga-me that freedom was only granted to the strong. Without it, he wouldn't be capable of achieving his goals. His companions were visibly shocked, and even the leaders of both groups were impressed. He knocked him down and commented that perhaps this was how Toga-me perceived him. He declared himself to be the type of person he detested the most, and because of that, he couldn't afford to lose to him, even if it meant his death. Sakura readied himself for the assault, executing a swift back kick. Despite his effort, Toga-me stood firm, prompting Sakura to continue his barrage of attacks with full force. Spectators were taken aback by Sakura's sudden shift. Meanwhile, even though Nire acknowledged Sakura's strength, he hadn't anticipated it to be at that level. What's the problem? Sakura questioned. Should he triumph over Toga-me? It would refute all his claims, suggesting his arrogance stemmed solely from his companions. Wasn't that the essence of their nonsensical creed? The crowd and leaders displayed a range of emotions. It was evident in Sakura's eyes that he was not willing to lose. However, his opponents said it was still too early to get excited, delivering a kick that sent Sakura crashing to the ground, making it difficult for him to stand up this time. Toga-me approached, visibly annoyed as Sakura seemed to disparage their creed. He inquired if Sakura knew anything about the Shishitoren. He asserted that everyone there always aspired to become stronger in their own way. That, he claimed, was the absolute creed of strength. Compared to those in Furin who fancied themselves heroes, He emphasized that the magnitude of their strength was not equal. The Shishitoren members rejoiced in Togame's performance. He gazed directly at Sakura. While Nire struggled to accept it, Suwa knew that the battle was far from over. Sakura attempted to stand up and stated that there was a difference between what they said and what they actually did. He looked at Togame and said they should change their name to the We Bully the Weak Club. Togame tried to silence him, but Sakura persisted. He accused them of targeting vulnerable individuals and even pursuing middle school students. He insisted he couldn't lose to someone who engaged in such behavior. The members of Foreign looked different now, and Togame became curious about what he meant. Finally, he learned that this was the reason the two were in the tunnel before. Togame excused himself to step down from the stage and approached Kanuma and Arima. He thought it was weird for the members of Foreign to come to their turf without reason. So, he asked them what they were doing there. Their eyes widened, and they struggled to answer. They hesitated before claiming they had simply encountered an unfamiliar student and decided to play fool around. However, they mentioned that it was Sarawatari who had suggested it. This revelation prompted Togame to deliver a surprise blow to them, greatly startling the Foreign members. Sakura, as well as the Shishitoren members, were equally taken aback by the sudden turn of events. Choji called out to Togame to return to their match. He said they had reached the exciting part. So, Togame returned, leaving the two lying on the floor. Umemiya had a different look in his eyes because of that. Togame apologized and thanked Sakura for waiting for him. Now, they were set to resume their battle, with Sakura simply gazing at him. A while back, Choji asked if he knew the meaning of the absolute creed of strength. Choji wasn't sure if he had heard it, so he answered yes, claiming he knew. He said it meant not bowing down to anyone and swearing to carry out your own way. That strength, he said, is something that allows you to be free. Among the members of Shishitoren, there were discussions about how unconventional their new recruits were. They simply entered and assaulted their adversaries. At that moment, young Choji and Togame appeared. Choji stated that they had beaten up the Zinc members in support of their comrade. Their audacity took them by surprise. Choji wants to be the guy who's most free above all, so he won't lose there. Confusion is evident on their faces. Togame explained that they were taught that strength is for being free. Thus, he believes the strongest person is the one with the most freedom. He sought confirmation from Choji, who agreed. Isn't that fun? He asked. Choji and Toga are competing to see who can achieve it first. Choji then extended an invitation for them to join. Back then, Choji stood out as the strongest and seemed to enjoy himself more than anyone else. He embodied their creed, shining like a radiant sun. While Choji dubbed it a competition, Togame didn't feel that way. Toga acknowledged his own lack of skill in social interactions, but thanks to Choji, they had companions and had fun. That's when he felt truly free. If Choji became their leader, it would surely be better for them. You could see how happy they were during those times. However, that turned out to be merely wishful thinking on his part. He sought out Choji and found him hanging around. He greeted him and asked why he was alone. Choji was pondering his leadership role. According to their belief, the strongest leader is the one with the most freedom. However, he confessed that he wasn't happy at all. This caught Togame off guard. Choji suggested that perhaps everyone on their team should be as strong as him. Togame concurred, stating that it sounded promising to train others. Their conversation was abruptly interrupted by someone's arrival, announcing that their teammate had been attacked by guys from Zinc. Togame was taken aback to learn it was people from Zinc once again. Choji jumped down, and when Togame was about to invite him, he suddenly attacked their teammate. Togame was stunned by what he saw. He brought down their teammate, kicking and questioning why he came back after losing. He said that he wouldn't become stronger and freer, nor would he be happy. Toga had a different reaction when Choji called him a weakling. He said that the weak weren't needed in Shishitoren. Wasn't he right? He asked Togame. Togame then questioned the reason behind his actions. He replied that he was the leader, the strongest, the free one, and he wouldn't bow down to anyone. If he didn't understand that, he should leave. Togame didn't expect that response from Choji. However, he just accepted it and said he would be the one to communicate with others. Choji, he said, should just smile with everyone. He decided to take the blame. He ensured that Shishitoren would continue until their son showed up again. Back to the present, the exchange of punches and kicks between Toga, Mei, and Sakura continued. The members of Shishitoren noticed that something seemed off. Even the members of Furin were surprised, especially Sakura. They said he wasn't taking the fight seriously. Toga Mei wasn't sure anymore this time. Sakura commented that Toga Mei's punches were no longer landing properly and his kicks lacked energy. What did he want to achieve, he asked. Toga Mei just laughed and pondered. What did he really want to do? The battle between the two continues. Sakura wonders why Toga Mei seems to be losing momentum and sharpness. There's a hesitation in his punches. He questions why Toga Mei appears to have lost interest in the fight. Toga Mei denied it. But the Sakura replied that his punches were not landing properly and his kicks lacked energy. In Sakura's mind, he thought they were being challenged by the members of Shishitoren after learning everything, but he was wrong. He remembered earlier when Toga Mei said he didn't know what happened in the tunnel, so he punched Kanuma and Arima. So now, he's interested in getting to know Toga Mei. What does he truly aim to accomplish? Even Toga Mei is contemplating. Sakura asked why he beat up his comrades when, in their group, strength is all that matters, right? It's true, that place is only for the strong, and the trash don't belong there. When the mind no longer functions, the lion can no longer control its limbs. As a result, all trash has been removed from the Shishitoren. Toga Mei had anticipated that facing Furin would prompt a change in Choji. Yet, he remarked that they merely concluded the Shishitoren with a battle devoid of justice and proper rationale. Nonetheless, he asserted that he couldn't return anymore. Since the day he decided to take responsibility for his mistake, he couldn't stop. Observing their symbol, he remarked that it had weakened. Once again, Toga Mei contemplated on what he wanted to do. He just said he wanted to go hiking. Sakura was surprised. Why was he getting emotional? If trash don't belong there, then why was he still standing there? He told him to stop being a moron. Toga Mei was speechless. Sakura stated that he wasn't any better than the trash there. He admitted he was strong but lame. And to understand this, he claimed he would defeat Toga Mei. After that, his lameness would cease, and he would become cool, someone he would want to fight against. Toga Mei chuckled at his statement. He said that Sakura was straightforward, especially towards someone who was clearly stronger than him. Sakura asserted he wasn't concerned of his thoughts, viewing it as the path to continue the fight, correct? Regardless of who it was, even someone who had once saved him, regardless of their strength, he wouldn't divert his gaze and would remain true to himself. Toga Mei was taken aback, reminiscing about the past as Sakura launched a powerful kick. Despite this, Toga stood unfazed, simply laughing and commending Sakura for being good at provoking him. He readied himself for a powerful punch towards Sakura, yet Sakura also managed to maintain balance to avoid falling. Confirming to his suspicion, Toga hadn't been taking it seriously earlier. Am I correct? He asked. He retorted that he wasn't shaggy hair. He was Toga Mei Joe. Removing the hair tie, he announced that now, he and Sakura would give it their all. The dynamics of the battle have shifted. Both Toga Mei and Sakura are now fully engaged. This surprised the members of Shishitoren, who wondered why the two of them were smiling. Suwa remarked that Sakura's performance was truly impressive, while Nire seemed on the verge of tears. He couldn't explain it, but for some reason, he was deeply moved by what was happening. Hiragi hadn't anticipated the fight reaching such intensity. Their leader's smile also irked Tsujishita. Meanwhile, Choji remained solely focused on the two. Sakura, on the other hand, found himself reflecting. Despite needing to confront someone like Toga Mei, why did he feel oddly at ease? Additionally, being addressed by his name like that was a first for him. Due to their immense enjoyment, even Toga Mei couldn't help but exclaim, "Sheesh." He was annoyed by Sakura's happiness. He also noticed that Sakura's moves were improving. He was certain that from now on, Sakura would become even stronger. Regardless of whoever his opponent might be, he wasn't afraid to stay true to himself. He hoped that Sakura wouldn't change. He challenged Sakura, who just smiled in response. They launched their attack simultaneously, landing kicks on each other's faces and causing both to fall. This made Nirei nervous. While lying on the stage, Sakura tried to sit up. His opponent laughed, and so did Sakura. Togame admitted he didn't expect the fight to be so refreshing. Sakura agreed, saying he had no idea either. With their impromptu bonding moment, Togame proposed they conclude the fight. Sakura accepted, deeming it acceptable. Once more, they readied themselves for the next assault, finding satisfaction in their exchange. Finally, Sakura's unexpected blow landed on his opponent's face, surprising even himself. The members of Furin, along with Choji and Umemiya, were equally caught off guard. Togame collapsed to the ground from the impact. Sakura wondered, but Togame just admitted he was wrong and couldn't stand up anymore, so he gave up. Prior to throwing a punch, Togame pondered Sakura's words about staying true to oneself regardless of the opponent. Witnessing Choji strike their comrade made him feel he should have acted similarly. Instead, he avoided and ran away. He admitted he couldn't do what he wanted. So, he thanked Sakura because now he understood. Consequently, he was floored by the protagonist, shocking everyone, particularly his Shishitoren comrades. They found it hard to believe when Toga announced his surrender. He was known for his resilience, always sporting a smile regardless of the circumstances. There must have been a misunderstanding. The members of Furin were equally taken aback, with Nirei still shedding tears. Their leader remained silent, but they were shocked when Sakura told Togame to stop joking. It was almost over, but he was giving up. Suddenly, Choji climbed onto the stage and greeted them with a smile, saying it was a good fight. He acknowledged Sakura's strength, expressing a hope that they fight in the future. Waving from the stage, he called out to Umemiya, signaling that it was their turn next. Sakura is annoyed because he's not finished yet. Togame called their leader and said they should stop, stating that it didn't align with their sense of justice. He admitted they were in the wrong. Nevertheless, Choji disregarded this and persisted in calling for Umemiya. When Togame rose and moved to intervene, Choji unexpectedly delivered a kick, catching Sakura off guard, telling him to remain silent since he had lost. Sakura struggled to restrain himself from retaliating against Choji. However, Umemiya stopped his fist, informing Sakura that it was time to switch. Despite his desire to strike Choji, Sakura had no choice but to comply. Umemiya remarked that it appeared he had succeeded in having a meaningful conversation. He believed his current actions were evidence of that. Turning to Sakura, he also advised Togame to let him take charge of the situation. Togame merely chuckled, teasingly calling him a meddler. Nevertheless, he urged him not to die. Sakura warned him not to lose, or else he would beat him up. He consented to this. As Sakura made his way out, he pondered why he felt irritated, considering he was accustomed to witnessing people getting roughed up anyway. So why did their leader suggest that they seemed to have sorted everything out well? He couldn't grasp it, as he hadn't heard anything while sparring. Upon descending, he was supported by Nirei and warmly received. He was taken aback by his own tears, admitting that the intensity of the fight had moved him to tears. Hiragi said that perhaps he didn't like it, but what happened in the final part was Togame making amends. He commended him, acknowledging his skill. Umemiya observed their conversation. However, before he could dwell on it further, Choji called him over, signaling that they were finally going to battle. But before they did, he had a question for Choji. Having witnessed the fight, didn't he feel anything? This caught him off guard, prompting him to seek clarification. With a puzzled expression, Umemiya simply scratched his head and said, "What a shame." Outside, rain poured, marking the commencement of the leader versus leader showdown. Choji questioned why it would be considered a waste. Ume just smiled in response, stating, "Whatever." Choji expressed that engaging in the battle wasn't fair. He believed the members of Bofurin were too powerful, vastly different from them. And because they were weak, he couldn't feel free. It wasn't enjoyable anymore. The Shishitoren members were surprised to hear this perspective from him. Togame remained silent and bowed his head. Choji said that if he won, then both Umei and the Bofurin would submit to him. He mentioned that Umei, the leader of the Furin, was the strongest and the freest. That's why he was always happy. Choji believed that by proving his superiority here and seizing control of Furin, ultimate freedom and happiness would be attained. Finally, the endless boredom was said to come to an end. That's why Choji encouraged Umei to give his all. Umei remained focused as Choji swiftly launched his attack. Umei was about to strike back, but Choji's speed in evading was remarkable. Surprising everyone, Choji swiftly leaped behind Umei, catching them off guard. Despite Choji's impressive agility, Umei swiftly seized his hand and hurled him away. Choji's agility allowed him to land perfectly on his feet. The members of Shishitoren were amazed. It was the first time they had seen such a movement. He seemed like a natural-born monster. Hiragi mentioned that Choji is the youngest leader in the history of Shishitoren. Sakura felt annoyed on the side. If Umei hadn't intervened, they would have engaged in another bout with Choji, prompting Sakura to realize something crucial. He needed to surpass his current limits and become even stronger. While fighting, Umei called Choji Tamiyama. He said he would only make things harder for himself if he dwelled on what-ifs. He remembered what he said when he might have been struggling. As he said, whatever Umei was thinking, he didn't understand it. Umei managed to block his punch, and while holding his hand, Umei unleashed a powerful blow. However, instead of falling, Choji managed to somersault back to his feet. Unable to comprehend his motives and seeming bewildered, Umei believed it was inconceivable to lose to someone who couldn't understand that. The battle between Umemiya and Choji has begun. They have already exchanged powerful punches and kicks. Their attacks on each other are so intense that they describe Tamiyama as crazy. Choji's agility allowed him to slip underneath Umemiya and grab his shirt from behind. Despite Umemiya enduring hits, he appeared surprisingly composed. The duel continued with both sides trading strikes, but Choji effortlessly evaded attacks by leaping and dodging. He's puzzled because it feels like his punches are landing, but why does it seem like they're having no effect on him? Umemiya's response was that they're too weak. He was surprised by that. He revealed that the reason is that he doesn't shoulder anything or doesn't take responsibility. Again, Choji said he doesn't understand what he's saying, but whatever it is, it doesn't matter if he manages to knock him down. He said he would beat him until he becomes quiet. He launched himself forward with full force, delivering an uppercut to Umemiya with a smile. However, Umemiya remained expressionless, stating that his punches wouldn't affect him. He shoved him to the ground. The members of Shishitoren couldn't believe it, and the members of Furin watched seriously, including Toga Mei. Choji acknowledged that his strikes were somewhat impactful. However, he asserted that regardless of the outcome, he would be free. Therefore, no one should stand in his way. This made Umemiya wonder what he meant by being free. Choji had a different perspective, implying that it meant he could enjoy himself. Umemiya then asked him what enjoyment meant to him. Choji paused before responding that, as it is now, he finds enjoyment in facing strong opponents. In response, Umemiya remarked that despite this, he didn't appear content. This frustrated Choji. Umemiya further commented that he struggled to understand himself, thus finding it challenging to feel fulfilled. He always thinks and talks about what-ifs, indicating that it might be a struggle for him. As a result, Umemiya said he has nothing but sympathy. He's sincerely concerned for the team led by someone like him. Whatever his reasons are, he's still the leader. So, he shouldn't let the people he leads show such faces. The members of Shishitoren were annoyed by this. Meanwhile, the members of Furin, especially Nire, were happy to belong to Bofurin. He's happy that their leader is Umemiya. While engaged in battle, Choji pondered over his words. What kind of expression was it referring to? He recalled the smiles of his comrades from before and wondered about their current demeanor. It all seems a bit fuzzy now, leaving him uncertain. He got annoyed because he couldn't understand. He told himself to shut up, but he kept repeating that he didn't know the answer. The spectators from both sides were puzzled. Choji couldn't help but shout out of extreme frustration. Toga Mei was surprised by this. Choji suddenly said that he no longer likes Umemiya. He cried and said he didn't need anything at all. He pondered when the world turned gray, dark, and chilling. Whatever Choji does, it seems unfulfilling. It's as if his heart has become a desert. He wondered what's missing in his life now. Understanding it proves challenging, but he's indifferent at this point. It's already too late, and whatever actions he takes, the result remains the same. With that in mind, he feels he doesn't need anything anymore. The spectators from Shishitoren remarked that they had never witnessed Tomiyama behaving like this before. They found his fighting style frightening. Meanwhile, members of Furin stood speechless in disbelief. Togame, too, couldn't believe what he was seeing. Choji relentlessly launched attacks, unleashing his pent-up emotions in the fight. He managed to floor Umemiya and continued to rain punches on his face without pause. Concerned, the Shishitoren members wondered why Umemiya wasn't retaliating despite the continuous punches. Togame and Sakura found themselves even more astonished. Sakura rose to his feet and exclaimed, questioning why Umemiya, who had boasted earlier about winning, was acting this way now. He was silenced and instructed to simply observe. This left Sakura perplexed. Despite this, Choji continued unabated, prompting Umemiya to speak up. He took responsibility, claiming he unintentionally cornered Choji. This caused Choji to pause. Umemiya explained that Choji was simply lost. Consequently, Choji resumed throwing repeated punches and was silenced once again. Umemiya's advice persisted, warning that if he continued and ruined everything, he would suffer from now on and forever. Choji shouted, "Shut up!" Unable to restrain his emotions, tears streamed down his face, surprising everyone watching. Umemiya called out to Choji once more, reassuring him that it was fine. He mentioned that Choji had found the answer. Standing up, Choji declared that he didn't care. As Umemiya struggled to rise, he asked if Choji recalled the Bofurin and Shishitoren fight from before. Maybe, he said, he was wrong after all. Togame was left speechless, recalling the past. They retreated along with the members of Shishitoren. Umemiya was still very young at that time. They commended Choji, expressing gratitude for his rescue. The joy on young Choji's face was evident back then. As they distanced themselves, Choji shouted to Umemiya, expressing satisfaction with their battle and hoping for a rematch soon. Returning to the present, Umemiya remarked that Choji's punches were heavier back then, and he seemed more radiant than he does now. His happiness was visibly evident then, in stark contrast to the present. He asked who was around him back then and what he saw in their eyes. Choji was still in tears, and Togame was also affected by the audience. Umemiya stepped forward, but Choji halted him, advising him not to approach. There was a different look in Umemiya's eyes, stirring deep emotions within Choji. Drawing closer, he grasped his face, urging him to recall what he witnessed then, something he and the Shishitoren leader needed. Below, Choji expressed his gratitude for the unfolding events. Suddenly, Umemiya yelled, instructing Choji to remember that, then delivered a powerful headbutt. As he fell, Choji thought of the faces of the Shishitoren members back then, who seemed happy. He said it was delightful to see and expressed his desire to join them. The Shishitoren's past was revisited, and Tomiyama found himself distracted by a cat on the street. His companions inquired about his actions. He explained that the cat seemed to desire a pat, so he approached it. This prompted them to wonder if he was feeling nervous, given that they were heading into a fight today. They reminded him that to become the head of the Shishitoren, he needed to maintain focus. Apologizing, he inquired about their opponent for the day. His companions were taken aback by his forgetfulness and burst into laughter. They recognized his potential to become a significant figure in the future and eagerly anticipated it. They placed their trust in him. Tomiyama expressed his happiness, stating that he would take care of them. He reflected on the joy of those times, wishing they could last forever. He called out to Togame, who stood smiling behind him, inviting him to join. Yet, they suddenly vanished, leaving Tomiyama alone. Glancing back, he searched for Togame, Arima, and Numa, but they were nowhere to be found. What did he perceive? It felt like a dream from the past. Tomiyama was met with Toga Mei's somber expression as he opened his eyes. He inquired about the reason for Toga Mei's sadness. Looking around, he saw that the members of Shishitoren were silent, as if in disbelief. The same was true for Furin. Finally, he realized that he lost against Umemiya. He narrated to Toga Mei his dream about the past. He said that everyone was smiling and seemed to be enjoying themselves. Now, finally, he understood. If everyone is happy, then he will be happy too. So, he asked him to smile. Unable to hold back his tears, while kneeling, he asked for forgiveness from Choji. This surprised Choji. Toga Mei took responsibility for everything, saying it was his fault for leaving him alone. He remembered seeing him looking troubled before. At that moment, he made sure that their companions would only leave him behind. Toga Mei supposedly allowed himself to be the one to hurt them, to be the one they hated. He didn't want Choji to hurt them and for them to hate him. He said he couldn't just ruin his ideal world like that. This made Choji wonder what he meant by an ideal world. He said it was a time when everyone loved and admired him. During those times, Choji was carried by him. So, on that day, even though he knew it was wrong, he still chose to look away. However, he now understands, thanks to Sakura, who helped him realize the importance of authenticity. Toga Mei mentioned that coming from Shishitoren, to stay true to his beliefs, he should have intervened. Once again, he sought forgiveness for not retaliating. He expressed regret for not discussing it with him. They should have sought the answer together, so he extended his apology. Toga Mei was tearful because he left him alone. He took what he needed most at that time. Consequently, he repeatedly expressed his regrets to him. Choji replied, expressing his belief that he would find the greatest happiness as the leader of the group. He compared it to a quest for a treasure chest atop a mountain, filled with anticipation that once he obtains it, he will experience unparalleled freedom. His heart raced with excitement, expecting something extraordinary to unfold. Yet, upon reaching it, he was startled to discover it empty, devoid of the anticipated joy but filled with an unsettling fear instead. Uncertain of his next move, he felt a sense of purposelessness despite his efforts. He acknowledged the need to take action, yet found himself without any guidance to uncover it until everything faded from his sight. Nevertheless, Tomiyama admitted that he blamed everyone. He told Toga Mei that he didn't take it from him. From the beginning, he said he didn't need it. It was right that he was excessively happy during those times when they just laughed together. He was already free then, but he didn't realize that he was also the one who ruined everything. All by himself. He just laughed and admitted that he was foolish. Toga Mei couldn't believe it and said he was wrong. Choji stopped him and said that if not for him, everything might have been lost on him. Umemiya said not to let them show that expression. He confessed to having been blind. Perhaps their faces had been like that for a long time. He took responsibility, so that's how he felt. Nevertheless, he still tried to keep them all together. That's why he thanked Toga Mei for protecting everyone. He asked for forgiveness. Surely, that must have been painful and difficult. He cried and asked for forgiveness. While still on stage, the members of Shishitoren questioned if they were merely dreaming, considering their leader, Tomiyama, had been defeated. Additionally, they exchanged whispers, wondering if they had correctly heard the conversation. This prompted them to contemplate their next steps. Tomiyama expressed his gratitude as he stood up. He assured them he was fine now, smiling as he mentioned that he should be the one to make amends. He then approached Umemiya and removed his jacket. Toga Mei was taken aback when he saw Tomiyama handing his Shishitoren jacket to Umemiya, leaving him speechless. He admitted defeat, so he's leaving Shishitoren. The onlookers couldn't believe it. He handed over everything to Umemiya and bowed. He expressed his hope that Umemiya would take care of them. Following suit, Toga Mei also removed his jacket. However, Umemiya then signaled that he didn't want it. They were surprised by this. Perhaps he put their group in a difficult position, but he clarified that he had no intention of taking theirs. He didn't want their team to grow larger because it would be troublesome. He didn't want to be bothered about who's above or anything else. This made Choji wonder what would happen next. He replied that from now on, they and Bofrin would be friends. They were surprised by his answer. It meant, he said, that their fight was actually a get-together. He waved to the audience and thanked them for coming. He asked if they enjoyed it. The members of Shishitoren couldn't believe it. Umemiya said the fight was over, so they could leave now. Choji just laughed and said he's really a different and interesting person. He just smiled and asked if there was a place to eat where they could get takeout. Togame wondered why. He announced that it was party time. With a broad grin, Umemiya raised a cheer and commended everyone with a good work. Sakura, however, wasn't amused and questioned the situation. He wondered why they were dining on the rooftop. Joining them were Choji and Togame from Shishitoren. The members of Furin were thrilled about the delicious-looking menu from the pub street. It was time to dig in. Umemiya was enthusiastic about eating, and Hiragi confirmed the deliciousness of the food. Umemiya wanted to add more squeezed lemons to the chicken, but Hiragi intervened. Nire was taken aback seeing them eat as if nothing had happened. Suwa concurred, claiming he couldn't eat either, but clarified it was merely a diet. They found it hard to believe. While observing Choji and Umemiya dining together, Sakura questioned why they were sharing a meal with their recent opponent. Before that, he pondered whether the recent events could even be classified as a fight. How did Umemiya manage to orchestrate such a situation? They also noticed that Togame wasn't eating. Abruptly, he knelt down and requested forgiveness from everyone. Sakura was taken aback when he claimed that the entire incident was his fault. He allowed the Shishitoren to decay, which prompted him to initiate the conflict earlier. He apologized profusely to them. Choji expressed concern, mentioning that they had a conversation earlier. However, Togameya's guilt persisted. Umemiya paused, then suddenly turned to Sakura and asked what he wished to do, emphasizing that it was his decision. Sakura was taken aback and turned to Togame. He expressed his readiness to accept any punishment they might give him, insisting that it was the right thing to do. Sakura was at a loss for words, reminiscing about their first encounter, leading up to their recent confrontation. Unable to contain himself, he expressed his desire for him to become a cool person, to not be lame like earlier. Togame was taken aback. He then bowed and gave his assurance. This drew amused reactions from the foreign members. With everything settled, it was time to eat. Umemiya showed curiosity about the food and happily tried the fries. This prompted Choji's curiosity, as he wondered why Umemiya was so cheerful despite being the leader of the Bofurin. His curiosity was evident on his face, so he grinned and mentioned that he simply loves to eat. His companions were taken aback. Tomiyama nodded in agreement, confessing his own fondness for food. He revealed that his favorite was curry, and when asked about his preference, Umemiya stated it was omi rice. Yet, he emphasized it wasn't just about the food. He cherished the moments when they were all together, sharing a meal, conversing, and laughing, despite any setbacks. He claimed to be happier than ever now, attributing it not to his leadership of the foreign. Tomiyama was impressed by his response. Tomiyama remembered that he used to enjoy himself before he became the leader of the Shishitoren. When everyone laughed, he laughed too. However, he didn't realize how much he enjoyed it back then. He had always thought he would only enjoy it once he reached the top. It made him wonder why he didn't realize it then. Togame remained silent while Umemiya said, "People breathe all the time. However, we don't appreciate the oxygen every second we breathe. It just shows how natural it is for us to always have it." Tomiyama directed his gaze towards Togame, who remained silent. He expressed satisfaction in him realizing these things before it was too late. Umemiya was genuinely happy for him, a sentiment that caught Sakura off guard. As they pondered in silence, Tomiyama posed another question. If he understood all this, why did he choose to lead them? This question left him lost in thought as he passed him food, surprising Tomiyama. The response was unexpected, that they could share meals together, just as they were doing now. Umemiya added that when everyone is happy and smiling, then he can enjoy his meal. He thought carefully about how he could achieve this. The only answer was to become the leader of Furin. He didn't work to become a leader, rather, he needed to be a leader to accomplish that goal. There might be a better way to achieve his dream, but if he were to rely on that alone, then it wouldn't happen that they are eating together now. Tomiyama smiled and said he was truly unique. He understood himself, and he became their leader. In response, Umemiya clarified that he didn't simply become their leader. He explained that they had aided him in becoming a leader. He emphasized that becoming a leader alone is impossible. His response struck a chord with everyone, particularly Sakura, who harbored aspirations of reaching the top. Umemiya elaborated that he assumed leadership because his teammates chose him. They empathized with him and assisted him in achieving that objective. Furthermore, when he attained leadership, his aim was no longer solely personal. Therefore, to accomplish that, he asserted, regardless of the obstacles, even if he were backed into a corner, he would never be defeated. Umemiya and Sakura exchanged glances. Thanks to Umemiya's words, Tomiyama finally grasped that he was bearing the burden. Recollecting the advice given during their fight earlier, he understood why his punches lacked power. He wasn't shouldering anything. Togame, initially puzzled by Tomiyama's silence, suddenly lay down and smiled. He then suddenly laid down with a realization. No wonder he couldn't win the fight. After the meal, it was time for them to leave. Umemiya invited Tomiyama to visit sometime. They agreed that the food was indeed delicious, but there were still more delicious things they should try. It's a shame he didn't bring something, Umemiya said, but when he reached into his pocket, he noticed there was bread there. He had forgotten that he brought anpan before going there. He handed it to them to try. It was already a bit cold, but Hiragi said that being cold wasn't the problem. Tomiyama accepted it and thanked him. Next time, he should get a freshly baked one, Umemiya advised. They exchanged farewells, expressing hopes of meeting again in the future. Sakura also stole a glance and bid them farewell. Catching Togame's gaze made him feel awkward, so he looked away and waved goodbye. Even though his back was turned, Togame responded with a smile. As they departed, Tomiyama had something to share with his friend. Holding the anpan, he expressed his newfound understanding. He realized that what he had done couldn't be resolved with a simple apology. His friend agreed. This realization left him uncertain about what actions he should take. Despite his uncertainty, he knew he needed them. So, his statement was cut short when Togame took the bread from his hand, saying they were the same. No matter what Togame did, it cannot be reversed. He also desires to make amends for his actions, but he's unsure what to do after apologizing. Thus, he realizes he must confront it. He invited Tomiyama to join him in seeking the answer together. Dividing the bread, he offered it to him. Together, they sampled what Umemiya had given. Tomiyama chuckled, which caught Togame off guard. His laughter stemmed from the bread being slightly stale and cold, yet still delicious. This surprised Togame. Tomiyama found pleasure in the bread and pondered what it would taste like fresh from the oven. Out of the blue, rain began to pour, catching them off guard as they hadn't realized it was still raining. Togame concurred, finding it peculiar given the sunny weather. They simply chuckled about it. Meanwhile, Sasaki waited outside the cafe. Abruptly, he dashed, surprising Kotoha. Hastily, he approached to warmly welcome back the foreign members. Umemiya was taken aback to see him there, questioning if he had been waiting the whole time. Unable to respond, it startled them. He was at a loss for words, but Umemiya gently patted him on the head. He said that they had everything under control and that everything was now fine. Gratitude overwhelmed him, bringing tears to his eyes. Sakura couldn't meet his gaze directly. They entered the cafe, and when greeted by Kotoha, she was surprised to see them. It appeared they had taken care of their bruises already, and Umemiya expressed his excitement, mentioning how he missed her. To this, she remarked it was a bit too flashy, then brushed past him without acknowledgement. She promptly approached the others to inquire if they were all right. Hiragi assured her everything was fine. Kotoha noticed how they seemed like friends now and observed Sakura's appearance, looking somewhat roughed up. She warmly welcomed them. Meanwhile, Sakura remained silent, reflecting on their earlier conversation. Umemiya had told him he became the leader because they chose him. This puzzled them, considering Sakura's quiet demeanor all this time, prompting them to ask if there was any issue. Suddenly, he He walked out abruptly, announcing his departure. They were surprised by the unexpected exit, but Umemiya swiftly intervened, pulling him back and questioning his actions. Lifting him, he emphasized the importance of the day and suggested they should celebrate. Umemiya ordered a special coffee from Kodoha and settled him back into the chair, asking what they should commemorate. He responded that he had managed to engage in the discussion during the battle, proposing it as a reason to celebrate. Sakura couldn't believe it. Some others chimed in, claiming it made no sense, and Nairai and Suwa seemed clueless about the matter. Sakura resisted, suggesting they could celebrate without him. Umemiya simply smiled and expressed his desire to have a conversation with him. Sakura had the impression that being a leader meant working alone, and that the strongest person should be at the top. Umemiya approached him and inquired about his conversation with Togame. The rest of the foreign members were seated at the adjacent table. Sakura explained that there was no conversation at all. He didn't hear a word from Togame's fist. This revelation surprised Umemiya, who chuckled at Sakura's literal interpretation. The others found it amusing as well. Sakura, feeling annoyed, questioned what their issue was. Umemiya claimed to be in the wrong for not explaining it clearly. He clarified that it had no connection with telepathy, emphasizing that even he couldn't hear such voices. He explained that the gesture with the fist wasn't meant to convey messages in that manner. According to him, it merely served as a medium to express one's genuine emotions, being more primal than language. This made it easier to communicate feelings. Sakura paused to reflect, accidentally spilling his coffee on Umemiya when he mentioned the feelings of liking and disliking. Umemiya's eye hurt because of what happened. Tsujishita stood up angrily, but Hiragi calmed him down. Kodoha came over and handed a towel, asking what they were up to and told them to wipe down and clean everything. Sakura didn't quite grasp his meaning. Umemiya mentioned that through his conversation with Togame, he managed to like him. He was certain of it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have attempted to punch Tamiyama. This left Sakura speechless. That was the evidence that their discussion had worked out. When asked why it needed to be celebrated, their leader responded that it was because he was happy. Sakura was taken aback by this. He remembered hearing about an outsider coming there and became curious about what kind of person they might be. After spending a few days with him, he's now certain that he's a good person. Sakura was left speechless by the notion of someone like him, a good guy, visiting their place. Umemiya expressed his happiness about it. Tsujishita, however, felt annoyed. Hiragi proposed having a welcome party instead of their current peculiar celebration. These words prompted Sakura to reflect. Why were they so quick to accept him? Even the locals and the foreign students readily embraced him. He came to be their leader, to challenge him. But now, that seemed impossible. From the very start, he's been the type of person who isn't readily embraced by others. So, he resolved to become stronger independently. He aimed to rise to the top of that school and find his place in the world. However, to become a leader there, he needs others. And since no one will accept him, he believes he can't achieve it. Suddenly, someone intervened. It was Nire, recalling what he said yesterday, that he's not lame at all. He mentioned looking at him differently, which made him feel content. Consequently, he paused abruptly and forgot his train of thought. Suwa then reassured him not to fret because he effectively conveyed his message. This brought a smile to Umemiya's face. He inquired if Sakura understood the premise of achieving success through fist communication. This made Sakura ponder what condition he was referring to. It was about the desire to understand the other person, he said, and he claimed to have achieved it. That's how he managed to converse with Togame while they were fighting. Accepting and understanding others isn't easy. And to do that, you need to observe them closely. He claimed to have done so and expressed his desire to understand Togame. This revelation caught Sakura off guard. He emphasized that he didn't want to give up on others and insisted it wasn't a necessity. He simply needs to observe them closely. If he could accomplish that, he believed he could handle whatever he desired, even being a leader, if that's what he truly desires. Umemiya just laughed and asked, "Is that so?" Sakura couldn't believe what he heard. Their companions, except for Tsujishita, just smiled. Even Kotoha seemed delighted. Then suddenly, Sakura stood up and remarked that it meant he would defeat him. Amemiya just chuckled and replied, "Well, if that time comes." He paused as Sugishita stood up. Amemiya was surprised and asked what the issue was. As it turned out, Sugishita suddenly grabbed a chair, announcing his intention to crush Sakura. Hiragi intervened to restrain him while Sakura challenged him. Kotoha grew irritated by their commotion, suggesting that if they wanted to fight, they should take it outside.